Shoot a smoke flare, something.
Huh?
Ready?
I am.
Are you all ready? David?
David, you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready?
Go ahead. I'm fine.
Good evening. I will now call the board meeting of the Nelson County Board of Education to order today, April 18th, 2023, as of 5:31 p.m. Please join Ms. Hollingshead, Ms. Smith, Mr. Thomas, students from Cox's Creek, as they lead us in the pledge. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. Wonderful job. Okay. I do need a motion to move the executive session to the end after the board calendar. Do I have a motion?
I moved to end it to the end of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Deaton. Do I hear a second?
Discussion.
Okay.
So I know that there's a lot of angst that has been developed within the community, and especially because they saw this item on the agenda. And so here's where I say I'm the one that asked for it to be on the agenda. I made that request. And the reason why I made that request is because the entire board, the body politic, was made aware by the board attorney that another attorney had been contacted by one or more individuals on this school board. It was not me, and I'll let other school board members state whether or not they're the ones that contacted another outside attorney. And the reason apparently why that one or more individuals had contacted an outside attorney, not the board attorney that works on behalf of this board body politic, was because they wanted to have a conversation about whether or not there would be the opportunity to buy out Superintendent Bradley's contract. And so I feel that it was very unethical for individual members of the board to end up taking it upon themselves and not having a full discussion with the entire board as a body politic. You notice I keep on making that comment, body politic. As individuals, each of us as board members do not have any power. It is as the body politic, the 5 school board members, that has the ability to make things happen. And so I do not like the idea that since I made the request to have this item added to the agenda, and nobody on this board, including the board chair, reached out to me to ask, could we please move it to the end? I believe that's wrong. And actually, it was even said that the board attorney did not need to be present. And I had specifically asked for the board attorney to be present because the board attorney is the one that has the facts and the information for this discussion. So the purpose of this, again, I asked that this executive session be on here, not because I have zero faith in our superintendent. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I asked that this executive session be put on here because of a shadow board that is occurring among certain members of this Board of Education.
As I said, I have a motion to put this board item at the end of the board session underneath the board calendar. Do I hear a second?
I'll make a second.
Okay, I have a second.
I'll ask for a voice vote on this.
Yes. Mr. Norman?
Yes.
Ms.
Yay.
Deaton?
No.
Mr.
No,
Jack?
you're next, Miss Berry.
No, I'm the last.
You're
to
next,
vote.
Miss Berry.
I'm the last to vote.
As we're going, you're next,
No,
Miss Berry.
I am the chairman, and I do the last vote.
Okay, I'll say no.
Okay, and I say yes.
Okay,
Motion
so I
passed.
then ask that every person in the
Okay.
audience, please make sure you stay until the very end whenever we come out of executive session so that you can hear what the discussion was. Otherwise, we would have been able to have this at the very beginning of this meeting.
Thank you, and we're trying to, after the work session we had during the state conference, is trying to avoid any kind of irregularity or more smooth for a board meeting the way Mr. Ed Massey proposed.
And Mr. Ed Massey also said that a key part of building a body politic is to build trust among the board members.
Well, I see that there's not a lot of that either, so. Okay, our next item will be the meeting of our goals and agenda. Mr. Superintendent, Mr. Bradley?
Welcome to Cox's Creek Elementary School tonight. We'll be covering a number of items. First and foremost, we'll be learning about the work going on at the Cox's Creek School and some of the values, the benefits that the Cox's Creek is working to provide for students and families. Secondly, we'll be looking at some big picture financial decisions based on some of our long-term goals. And finally, we'll be evaluating, talking about a number of different factors that impact next steps for facility planning.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is going to be our Cox's Creek data dashboard.
Hello there. My name is Haley Victory, and I am so excited to welcome you all to Cox's Creek Elementary School. The Student Showcase is my very favorite part of every board meeting because it's about getting to tell our board and our community about the fabulous things that we're doing within our schools. So I have a fabulous group of kiddos here, Miss Leona, Mr. Caden, and Miss Olivia, and they're going to help me in this presentation because they're part of our Bulldog Student Challenge team. And what that means is we have built a group of students that originally they were our house leaders, but we've taken that group of students and they're giving us feedback and suggestions, and we're really proud of our school, but they're helping it be an even better place for kiddos to learn. So if you want to take a look at this pamphlet that is in your chair, we're really excited to tell you about Cox's Creek Elementary School. So we're going to start by opening it up to the middle. And in the middle of this pamphlet, you're going to see some information about the Cox's Creek values. So our values are really the things that we try to do each and every day. They're something that we want our staff to embody and our students to embody and our whole entire school community to embody. So you're going to see all 5 of the Cox's Creek values. The first one is an everything care. And at Cox's Creek, we say me, you, and our school too. And that just means we want you to be a caretaker in all that you do. So yes, you can. That's my favorite value. And it just means that our kiddos can do really big things. They're K through 5. Yes, we're building that foundation. But if you talk to a Cox's Creek staff member, they're going to tell you that yes, our kids can. They can do the very big stuff. So these next 3 values are values that we've really focused on this school year. And if we're going to say that something's our value, we really need to step back and say, okay, are the things that we're doing matching our values? And what data do we have to show that we're making progress in these values? So the first value that we're going to talk about in regards to data is relationships first. And that just means that we want all of our students to know that they matter and that they belong here. And Miss Leona is our data expert, and she's going to report to you on that in just a minute. But the question that we asked ourselves was, what percentage of Bulldogs report that they have an adult in this building with whom they feel connected? So that's how we were gauging that. So the next value is growth matters. Truly at Cox's Creek Elementary School, we believe that regardless of the starting point, when a kiddo walks into the door and becomes a Bulldog, it is our job to grow them. And in elementary school, we're that foundation. So we're growing them academically, we're growing them emotionally, we're growing them socially, and they're becoming some very impressive individuals. But our data point that we took was an academic data point because we're just asking all of our students to grow. We know that growth matters leads to pursuing excellence and academic success. So our signal of success was what percentage of Bulldogs demonstrated academic growth in reading and math on the iReady assessment from fall to winter. Because our kiddos know, I'm not asking you to be the tip top. I'm asking you to try your best and to grow. So this fabulous group is just about to take over, and the value that they're going to talk to you about is pursuing excellence. And really, well, I'm going to let them talk about it. Tell us about pursuing excellence, okay?
Hello, my name is Olivia Hollingshead, and as a part of the Bulldog Challenge team, we have talked about pursuing excellence. When you walk into Cox's Creek, we want you to see that. Not only do we want our kids to show it, we want them to realize all they can do with pursuing excellence, all the jobs they could have, all the achievements ahead. Moving on, we have Caden Smith talking about how we will get students to pursue excellence.
Hello, my name is Caden Smith, and I'm a 5th grader, and I'm a part of the Student Bulldog Challenge team. Motivation, not just motivation, but how to motivate students to try their best. Motivation isn't just giving someone a reward. Motivation is giving someone a challenge and then putting in 100% effort. Reward. At first, we didn't know how to reward students. Should we do the top scoring students or who showed the most growth? Should we do everyone who showed growth? One of those values here is growth. Growth. Growth takes effort. We value growth as much as we value high achievement. We want you to show growth. We as a team thought of this and many other things, including how to hype students before the test. We had thought about giving students prizes for high effort or doing something before the test. We as a team decided on both and planned a house rally before the test. If you gave it your best effort, you would receive the reward. Our team would lead the house rally and split into groups to think of games and things we could do during the house rally. We are doing all of these things to get our Bulldogs to pursue excellence. Next up is Leona Thomas.
Hi, I'm Leona Thomas, and I'm also a member of the Bulldog Challenge team. My teammates have already talked to you about pursuing excellence. I'm going to be talking to you about our data on our values of relationships first and growth matters. If you look to the back of your pamphlets, you can find some charts. On the first chart, we can see that 91% of our students feel that they have an adult in this building that they can talk to. Moving on to the next chart, we can see that 89% of our students have showed academic growth in reading. And last but certainly not least, on our third chart, we can see that 91% of our students have shown growth academically in math.
So really, the goal of this student challenge team was first to look at the value of pursuing excellence and say, okay, what does that actually mean? And how can we make our kids live that each and every day? And we talk about at Cox's Creek how if your name is on it, it is your very best work. And Ms. Nuzzo and I have been working with the student challenge team to define pursuing excellence. But then as Caden talked about, we've also been talking about how do we motivate our kids to pursue excellence? How do we get them to live that? And then Miss Leona, our data gal, helped to showcase how this is going. And we're really proud of how this is going. We're proud of the students that report that they have a positive connection in the building. We're also proud of the growth that our kiddos are making. We know that in order to pursue excellence, we've got to also show growth. That's how we get there. So we're really proud of that work. So, last thing, you can find this data if you go to our school website. Our data dashboard, along with some other data, is linked there if you want to check that out further. I think we're good. Do you all have any questions for us?
I have one. I'm going to jump on real quick before I beat Damon. First of all, Olivia, shout hello to your mom who's in India. So say hello, Mom. Because I know she's watching, probably, I think it's about, 2 o'clock in the morning there somewhere. So I'm sure she's up watching that. You guys are doing fantastic, and I appreciate you guys sharing the growth that you guys are showing in both your math and reading skills. I know that's a big conversation in our community right now, and I'm so proud that you guys are representing that tonight.
So my question's for Leona. Am I saying that right? Okay. Did you even use your note cards? And I say that because as I was listening to each of you, and one, I'll say, each of you did a tremendous job. I mean, sharing this information, taking ownership of it, showing how you value and how you're actually taking ownership of the learning that's going on for yourself in this building. All of you are to be commended. But as I was listening and watching you, Leona, I never saw you look at your note cards. Is there even anything written on them? Okay. I figured that you all had done quite a bit of practicing, and again, all three of you did a tremendous job, but I just kept watching you going, she doesn't have anything on her note cards at all, does she?
So I just wanted to comment about this conversation you guys have been having as a challenge team. How long have your challenge teams, how long have you been engaging in the conversation with challenge teams this year? So if we look to the future of continuous improvement processes, this is really for all the community members that are paying attention to the work that's going on with the district-wide and the community challenge teams. The future of local school improvement and accountability will continue to shift more and more towards people, students, and community members coming together to have conversations about what matters most and how we continue to get better at those things. These conversations at Cox's Creek are symptomatic of conversations we're having across the community. I know there's a lot of conversations around state test scores. Much of this data, in theory, does translate over to that in time. At the same time, what's most important is that we're having ongoing conversations looking at data locally that matters. As you guys know, these young men and women will be taking a state assessment here in about 3 weeks. We won't get that data back until October. That's a part of just the mechanization of that system that really isn't about the student growth. It's more about federal and state accountability measures that rank and sort. Ultimately, the future of real sustainable growth in communities is exactly what's going on when we think about what is it that matters to Cox's Creek families, what is it that matters to Cox's Creek educators, and deepening that conversation. So our goal this year is that we continue to have every school. So next month we'll be at Bloomfield Middle School. We'll be at the Area Technology Center in June. That will allow us to continue to deepen this conversation. A year from now, the goal is when we're back here at Cox's Creek that this conversation continues to grow and be more robust. So I just want to provide some context to the audience, why we're doing these conversations, how they play into the big picture.
And if I can follow up on that, so I was trying to find, it was a quote that I had come across recently, and Olivia, what you shared about relationships made me think about it. And really, I think this is something that all of us here tonight, if we take a moment and just really think about the phrasing and the concept and what this is trying to get at. And I think, Olivia, you said it very well. So education is always about relationships. Great teachers are not just instructors and test administrators. They are mentors, coaches, motivators, and lifelong sources of inspiration to their students. And I think that's what we see with your teachers here at Cox's Creek, as well as teachers across this school district, is they are not just an instructor or a test administrator. that they are the ones that are giving inspiration for you all to continue to be lifelong earners. And I think that's something we all need to recognize, the work that our educators are doing.
Is that it? Ms. Victor, thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
thank you, young people. Great job. Thank you. And with that great presentation, we now move into our guest comments. Thank you for attending our Nelson County School Board meeting. Any person wishing to address the board may do so by following these rules. Individuals representing themselves are limited to 3 minutes. Individuals representing a group are limited to 5 minutes. Please step forward, state your name and address, and if you represent a group, state the name of the group and who you are representing.
Diane, before you get started, would you describe how the timer would be? Because that was a little confusing last time. How are you going to do it tonight?
Okay, thank you. We have Kristen's here. We have 30
Kristen, if you
minutes.
could move the podium up with it as well. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, we have 30 minutes worth of comments. We took, with Kristen, we took who had 5 minutes, who had 3, and that equaled exact 30 minutes. So it's not the clapping, it's not, each person is given their rightful time, but I'm asking you to please be respectful. That's all I ask. I want everybody to be able to hear, unlike last month, I want everyone to be able to hear their comments. And that's all I'm asking, is to let people have their say. Some of you did last month, some of you did not. I want all of you to have your say.
So we are limiting the total amount of time to 30 minutes.
Yes, sir.
And that is board policy?
No.
The state policy is 15, you all can argue all you want to
The
about this.
state policy
It is
reads,
going to be
and our
30
county
minutes. It's going to be
policy
30
reads
minutes.
a minimum of 15 minutes.
That's
the
right.
reason behind that was because there were school districts that were not allowing guest comments at all. The issue that I have with this, and you guys well know, Ms. Berry, is the fact that for 2 years we have never limited guest comments. As a matter of fact,
For longer than 2 years, Ms. Bowling. I've been on the board
well,
15 years,
my
and we
2
have
years.
never.
My 2 years, it has never been even a discussion. Never has it came from me that we should limit people that were in opposition of any conversation this board was having. And the fact that we are having a limit on our guest comments is a disservice to the people in this community. They are the only ones that hold this board accountable. There is no ethics committee that holds this board accountable. There is no one in this state that holds this board accountable. So the only time you get to speak to us is in these board meetings.
That's not
unless
true,
you talk
Tracy.
to us in person or
That's
you
not true,
emailed us.
This is a business meeting.
Well,
And
I'll tell you,
we have an agenda
I
full
will
of
say
business.
this right now. Ms. Bowling, when you get to be chairperson next year, you can talk as long as you want to, but for right now, it will be 30 minutes. Enough is enough. But
So-
thank you for your comment.
So you're making the decision yourself?
Yes, sir, I am, because I'm the chairman, and I can make that decision myself. Our first speaker will be, with that being said, our first speaker will be Bill Osborne from Cox's Creek. Okay. He's speaking for a group. 5 minutes, please.
Before I start, I just want to, there's been some questions on why I finally showed up at a board meeting.
Yeah, his time needs
I
to
lost my daughter
One
February
moment.
10th, and I've had a year of hell, but I'm ready to go. I'm back, and I'm ready to go. I'm glad to be back. I'm a former board member.
Okay, hold on, go ahead, Bill.
Only 3 minutes on the timer. I'm speaking for a group.
You got 5. You got 4 minutes and 51 seconds now.
My name is Bill Osborne. I go back to 69, 70 as a freshman at Old Kentucky Home Middle School. Graduated in 74, stayed active in this school district, have donated more hours than anybody in here to the Nelson County Schools. Thousands of hours, thousands of dollars. I've never seen so much dysfunction as a board member or a former board member in my life. I'm embarrassed. But anyway, the thing that stirred me up, the comment that Mr. Jackie made in the February meeting at the 5-hour and 12-minute mark. 3 decades, he said, board members have skipped over New Haven, Kentucky. Well, that's not true. When I started as a board member in '99, I made sure that everybody knew my platform, what I was going to do. I know nothing about education, but I know a little bit about business. And we had schools. Boston was in shambles. Eli Brown was in shambles. Chapman was in shambles. We didn't have the growth of 15 cents, the 3-nickel tax. And I made it my mission to try to get one of those schools closed. In my 8 years, I promised no more than 2 terms. So, never did I believe in my wildest dreams that we would get them all replaced. And we started out, well, let's go back. We moved into 1988. Our football program was the worst in the state. Kyle Bob was here, some of the former players that played on the championship team. We were number, at the bottom, we were number 700 or 177 or something. We went after a coach that was a leader, and he turned our program around and made it the #1 program in the state of Kentucky in 8 short years. It can be done, but it can't be done with all this chaos. You have to work together as a team. You also stated about working for Project Graduation. Well, you're looking at one of the founding members of Project Graduation, 1992. We went to Oldham County and sat in a meeting until probably 11 o'clock at night. And they told us when we got up from that meeting that it was not possible. We were coming from a bourbon capital of the world. You don't have enough time. And to my knowledge, I think that may be one of the most successful Project Graduations that we ever had. Moving further on down the line, we state championship. And just to show you, just to give you some idea, when you create a position or hire somebody for a position, you should always be able to make them justify the value added to that position. How is this going to benefit our school system? How is this going to benefit us financially? People in this room do not know, probably weren't old enough. In 96, 97, 98, 99, does anybody know what the gate receipts were for football only in Nelson County? Over $100,000 a year. And all of a sudden, one day, somebody just flips off a switch, and look where we're at today. Now, I'd say this year was a successful season. But anyway, I started my tenure as board member in '99. We consolidated Eli Brown and Chapman. Faced a little opposition, but look where we're at today. Boston was our next school. We got it closed, but we made sure that the parents down there knew that we had to bring the 7th and 8th grade back from Old Kentucky home and put them in that school to have the numbers to get the state to sign off on the bonds. Then, the next school slated, now all you people from New Haven don't know this, but your school was next on the list when I left the board in 2006. And it wasn't going to be a K-5, it was going to be a K-8, just like Boston and Bloomfield. And for some reason, I don't know who took over and who moved Thomas Nelson up in front of New Haven, but whoever did, you need to start pointing fingers at that bunch of board members that were on the board at the time. Because you got skipped over, and I think there is at least one board member sitting here tonight that was on that board that voted to build Nelson County and skip over New Haven again. I don't know what year Todd Sanders left, but I know he left the board to take a position as transportation director. But guys, Amanda Deaton and Mr. Norman ran last year for the Board of Education. Everybody in this county knew their platform. But yet we proceeded with this program or this facilities plan knowing that it may fail or it's probably going to fail because if you look at the numbers after the election, almost 70% of the vote between those two, and they were running against incumbents. So that tells me that we got several people here tonight, one of the biggest crowds I've ever seen at a board meeting. And that's great that you're involved, but we got to look at the facts.
Excuse me, time up. Time's up. Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Courtney Higdon.
I think I heard it. Well, I'll turn
Speaking for a group. you hear me?
Hold on. No, you.
My name's Courtney Higdon. I'm speaking on behalf of Nelson County citizens advocating responsible education. My comments tonight focus on the recently released audit reports by the Cognia Group, commissioned by the Kentucky Department of Education as required by the Comprehensive Support and Improvement designation received by 2 of our schools due to their overall performance in the bottom 5% of the state. The KDE issued 3 reports. 2 reports were focused singularly on New Haven School and Foster Heights Elementary School, the 2 CSI schools in our district. Considering their CSI status, those reports revealed what was to be expected in terms of observations about where improvements are needed. The 3rd report, however, was something of a different nature. It turns out that when the KDE goes into districts to audit CSI designated schools, it conducts a review of the school district itself. As described in the report, the diagnostic review is a rigorous process that includes an in-depth examination of evidence and relevant performance data, interviews with stakeholders, and observations of instruction, learning, and operations. The results of this district-wide audit revealed widespread, systemic deficiencies in instruction and academic performance. The following are some of the key district-level observations of the audit team. Number 1, multiple interviews with stakeholders revealed that instructional leadership is lacking. Number 2, the team observed a lack of focus or urgency in addressing the academic deficiencies of the 2 CSI schools. Number 3, the team found no evidence showing the district provides support on strategies and resources designed to improve instruction. Consider that in the context of the fact our reality is that 44% of our teachers have 3 or fewer years of experience, and the audit team found no evidence that the district provides support on strategies and resources designed to improve instruction. Number 4, when asked what they would like to improve, I submit to you it's because of the failure of Superintendent Bradley to prioritize instruction and academic performance, and his failure to put in place infrastructure and investment and expertise to support these efforts. He was recently quoted as saying, educators and NCS are invested in academic success for all students, and that sounds great. Where is the evidence of the academic success? The only explicit academic performance data on the district's website shows that 70% of our 1st through 8th graders cannot read on level, and an even higher percentage, 80%, cannot do math on level. To put that into perspective, we have a little over 2,500 1st through 8th graders in our system. At those rates, we have nearly 1,800 1st through 8th graders who cannot read on level, and over 2,000 that can't do math on level. That's in a district of roughly 4,500 kids, and that data doesn't even consider how many of our high schoolers are behind. Our parents and our community are waking up to this reality. This is not doom and gloom, Mr. Superintendent. This is honesty, and this is being willing to see what's in front of us. They are making decisions. They're moving their kids. These failures are costing us dearly. With 800 Nelson County students attending the Bardstown school system right now, Superintendent Bradley's costing us about $2.5 million annually in SEEK funding. We cannot afford you, Mr. Superintendent. Your philosophy of education doesn't align with what the people of this county want, and I would submit with what the majority of the school board members want. And our kids matter more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker will be TJ Metcalf from Bloomfield.
TJ Metcalf, Bardstown, speaking by myself. So.
No, individual.
Individual, yeah. Once Wes Bradley encouraged me to jaywalk with him, and as I started walking towards the crosswalk, he said, "I don't know why you're crossing there, TJ. You're a rule breaker. So I come here tonight to break a rule. I come here to speak out despite knowing how our administration treats those with differing opinions, because I'm enraged and disgusted at some of our actions. You see, these past few months, Wes has been talking quite a lot about bourbon barrel taxes. We have a page dedicated to them on our district website. Bourbon taxes were on the agenda at the last board meeting, and we've talked about them on radio shows. So understand what you may be thinking. TJ, we're a school district. We shouldn't dive into political issues, but I want you to look at the material. Wes used politicians as references for his superintendency. Wes used to host Jimmy Higdon at our community brews. Our Next Gen legislative team has a member of the county GOP leadership on it. The list goes on and on. So our district is inherently political. So in Wes's political tour, he chose to talk about bourbon taxes when another critical and crushing piece of legislation for our students was happening at the same time, Senate Bill 150. According to the Trevor Project, 49% of Kentucky's LGBTQ youth seriously considered suicide in the past year. 17% of Kentucky LGBT youth attempted suicide last year. Maybe Wes Bradley doesn't know what it's like to open a card that says, "Happy birthday, faggot," and have confetti penises rain out. Maybe Wes Bradley doesn't know what it's like to carry a shopping bag and have a staff member hold out a limp wrist and ask if you're carrying a purse. Maybe Wes Bradley has never had death threats sent to him because of his sexuality, but I can tell you this, if it's happening to me, it's happening to our students. Our rhetoric has been strong this past year. We've all had our disagreements, and despite our differences, we believe we're doing what's right because we care about our students. So I have to wonder, when school districts like Danville Independent put out statements condemning SB 150, what does Nelson County do? We talk about bourbon. I know we don't talk about test scores because I agree our kids are more than just a number. But if we don't start looking out for our LGBTQ students, they'll just be a number, adding to the queer suicide rates in this state. So when you preach that students should live, work, and grow in Nelson County, we have students in Nelson County who are afraid to live, work, and grow inside of their own skin. And you, by your lack of action, said it's not okay to be you, and I don't support you. So if you indulge me, I'll leave you with a poem. Roses are red. 1 in 4 trans and non-binary youth attempt suicide each year. Wes Bradley cares more about bourbon barrels than he does your kids, especially if they're queer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jamie Miracle.
Jamie Miracle, Cox's Creek. It's just me, individual.
Okay, hold on.
Again, my name is Jamie Miracle. I'm a Cox's Creek resident, a parent of a 5th grader here and a 7th grader at BMS. I love this school. Miss Victory, the teachers, and staff here are some of the best in the county. Our PTO puts on the best events for families like the Back to School Bash, Christmas Cookies with Santa, the Spring Carnival. Miss Spoonermore's musicals are magical and have become a treasured tradition here. We have a school paper, and in this month's edition, you can read about our famous 5th grade wax museum and how our archery team will be competing in nationals next month. My children have thrived in this school, and the people working in this building truly care about them and love them. When my children's father passed away during the pandemic, this school wrapped them in love and helped them get through one of the hardest things they've ever gone through in their life. And for that, I will forever be grateful to this school. But to some of our board members here tonight, these things mean nothing because to them, a school's success can only be measured by the results of a standardized test. Ms. Deaton, apparently this is maybe the second time you've been in this building since you were elected as its board representative. I don't understand why a board member would have to be asked repeatedly to visit the school they represent. I don't understand because I grew up in a household of a board member that frequented this school without being asked. My father, Gary Miracle, whose name is on the plaque out there in the hallway and several other buildings in this county, displayed the character of a good board member. And I can only imagine what he would have to say about any board member ignoring multiple requests from a principal in this county to meet and discuss their school. Ms. Deaton, I know he would tell you that's not how you should serve this district nor this amazing school. Mr. Norman, if my father's school was struggling with test scores, I know without a doubt he would be the first to contact that principal and ask, what can I do, what do you need, and how can I help? Ms. Berry, we are already seeing teachers leave this county because of the dysfunction of this board, and we may find ourselves facing a teacher shortage crisis, and you won't be able to blame that on West Bradley. We know that our school system faces challenges right now. We know we have work to do, but what we don't need are board members who continue to fan the flame of hateful rhetoric advertised in the newspaper on a weekly basis. We do not need board members that want to divide and rearrange our school system without having a clue about what happens inside these buildings. We need board members that do not work against our school system by supporting a lawsuit against it, but who empower, encourage, and diligently work to support it. We need board members who are willing to take the time to find out what is actually going on in our schools by physically going into our schools. Board members who believe in our teachers and show them support through their actions and words of encouragement. We need more board members to show up at school events and share in all our great accomplishments and achievements of every school. We need board members who, despite KDE results, continue to serve this county with the love and compassion that it deserves and desperately needs from you right now. We need more board members who understand that our schools, our teachers, our kids, and my kids are more than just test scores. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Kurt Merrifield. Kurt Merrifield, there you go.
I'm just speaking for myself today.
Hold on.
All right. Kurt Merrifield, principal at Thomas Nelson High School. I'll try and be brief. So on February 2016, in a correspondence, Ms. Deaton, you state the following. I had several principals who signed the letter tell me a few days before, we support you, but we have to show solidarity, which is cowardice to me. So for those of you all keeping score, we now have board members belittling teachers in their work ethic, demeaning students in their comments made at board meetings. And now we have another board member opining on the cowardice of the principals in our school district. And that's why I'm compelled to speak here today, because of these fabricated and untrue comments about our principals. Comments that I can only assume were meant to imply divisiveness between the principals when there is none. I am not here to speak for my colleagues, but I will speak on their moral fiber, their integrity, and the ethics they demonstrate on a daily basis. I am honored to work alongside these individuals, and let me be clear, they are not cowards. They show tremendous courage daily and are uncompromised in their mission to do what is best for our students. And for you to insinuate that they would compromise their ethical duty to do what is best for students because they are forced to show solidarity is insulting. I know the character and the integrity of those I work with. It may be hard for members of the board to understand, but the principals of this school district do not have the luxury to go along to get along. We are far from perfect, but cowardice is the last thing the principals of Nelson County have demonstrated over the past months. Standing together, united to express our frustrations with decisions the board has made to advocate for our students is not cowardice. Having to confront budget and staffing cuts due to the deleterious financial implications board decisions make is not cowardice. Having to navigate the uncertainty caused by flippant comments that included zero input from school leadership to ensure students, teachers, and families feel supported and reassured of their futures is not cowardice. If anything, members of the board have made an already difficult job exponentially more challenging. Yet these dedicated principals show up every day to create experiences to move our students forward academically, socially, and vocationally. They continue to develop teachers and create learning environments that focus on foundational and next-generation skills for success. They are remarkable people. And if those principles are the faces of cowardice, then consider me one proud coward, because I could not ask for a better team of colleagues to learn and grow from.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Kyle Boblett.
Speaking for myself today.
Hold on. Okay.
I'm speaking today about the facility plan and the importance of telling the truth. I would have much preferred having a one-on-one conversation with Amanda Deaton. However, Amanda told me in a text that she would no longer be talking to me, as she didn't think it would be productive. At the end of the day, I'm tired of people being lied to. Our kids deserve better. A former coach of mine once told me, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. 2 years ago this week, Amanda Deaton, representing the city of Bloomfield as their attorney, stood in this gym nearly where I'm standing today. And she said, closing Bloomfield Middle School will hollow out Bloomfield's economy. Is that what you stand for, Amanda? Is that the truth? Now, 2 years and nearly $2 million later, Ms. Deaton sits on the board representing one of the most highly populated and fastest growing parts of Nelson County. And just in case you're wondering, it's not Bloomfield. Which makes sense, because Bloomfield's economy was never mentioned during Amanda's campaign. Was that campaign based in truth, Amanda? I spoke with Ms. Deaton just 2 months ago following the unfortunate bond rejections for the community campus. During that conversation, Amanda went out of her way to tell me, Kyle, moving forward, it just doesn't make sense to keep Bloomfield Middle School open. 3 times she went out of her way. Amanda, have you told Liz Gillis, Jack C., or Mayor Dudgeon about that? Is that what you stand for? Is that the truth? The next time I spoke to Amanda, she shared that she wanted one high school. But what didn't make sense about that was a few days prior, somebody that Amanda and I both trust and respect, she told somebody that we both trust and respect that one high school was dead. And if it came up again, she'd vote against it. Is that the truth? Here's the problem. In the legal world, having hidden agendas is part of the game. In education, we are in the business of telling the truth. The costs are too high. Kids and communities are at stake. Lies and hidden agendas create confusion and destroy progress. Remember, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. You showed your cards early, Amanda. You continue to put Bloomfield's economy ahead of what's best for all kids. In fact, you're willing to create false narratives about test scores, money, about leadership, to anything to protect your agenda. It is clear that you'll go into any length to keep Bloomfield first. Unfortunately, when you put the city of Bloomfield first, you continue to put the kids that live across your district, Deatsville, Rooster Run, Corman's Crossing, Samuels, and Cox's Creek, last.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's time to tell the truth, Amanda.
Thank you.
The entire community is watching.
Our next speaker will be Tiffany Clark.
Tiffany Clark, 1335 Bardstown Road, Springfield.
Excuse me?
Just saying my name and my address, that's it. So Zoe is going to speak. There you go.
Hello, I am Zoe Clark. I'm a 5th grader at the New Haven Elementary School. I would like to share what is important to me about how I learn best. For me, learning in a variety of ways is having lots of opportunities is important to me. To start with, I like learning in a variety of ways. Personally, my favorite way is hands-on learning. Some of my favorite hands-on activities are my social studies and science dioramas that I have created. In 3rd grade, I learned about the butterfly life cycle. We actually had butterflies in our classroom. Every day we were able to see the butterfly transform. This year, while learning about the first colonies, we worked with partners to make the 14th colony. We had to create our resources, economics, and transportation methods. After we made the 14th colony project, We had other students come observe our project, and we taught them about the colony we created. Also, while learning about the events that led to the American Revolution, we played a game with candy to see firsthand how the king taxed the colonists. Lastly, in math, I am currently learning volume, so we use blocks to show learning. We get to build a zoo animals and calculate the volume of the animal. To summarize, having a choice and a variety of learning options helps me concentrate and focus on my learning. In addition, I love Nelson County Schools because of the opportunities that I could have. In middle school, I would love to be able to take foreign languages as an elective. I want to travel all over the world and be able to talk to people in different languages. Currently, New Haven does not have this elective as an option. Also, I would like to have beta open to middle school. This was the first year we had beta at New Haven Elementary. I was able to attend the state convention in Lexington to see all of the talented kids across the state. I really love the speeches and dancing. As I really hope this opportunity is available for me, because we currently do not have middle school beta at New Haven. Lastly, in high school, I want to be able to observe doctors and nurses during the school day. As I stated earlier, I learn best through hands-on experiences, not sitting at a desk all day. In all, as a Nelson County student, I want opportunities that will help me in the future. In conclusion, I want what is best for me and all the other students in Nelson County. I want more than just the traditional sitting at the desk learning experience. I want to learn with my hands through experience that could occur in real life. I want to graduate from Nelson County Schools and be proud of all I accomplished and learned. How can you help me make these goals become a reality?
So I got 30 seconds, so hold on. So with that, what I will also say is, and Zoe knows this, Zoe is not a test taker. Zoe stresses herself out. She runs out of time. However, I can assure you, the teachers at New Haven School taught my daughter for the last 3 years how to read, how to write, and how to do math. This is authentic writing, and this is what we stand for.
Thank you very much. Last speaker will be Daniel Greenwell.
Well, I wasn't expecting to get to talk today, so you caught me a little off guard.
Daniel, your
So I'm
name?
Daniel Greenwell. I am speaking with NC Cares. I wanted to get with you a little bit about...
They've already spoken. They've already spoken.
What?
NC Cares already spoke. I think it was Ms. Higdon that spoke on behalf of them, wasn't it?
Can you not speak more than once? A group can't speak more than once?
That's the purpose of it being a group, is someone speaking on behalf of an entire group, not multiple people saying they're speaking on
That's
behalf
fine.
of
I mean, I wasn't really expecting to be able to get a chance to talk to anyway, so I'll just speak Daniel Greenwell as an individual. That'll be fine. We'll go with it. Daniel Greenwell, New Haven. I just wanted to get with you guys a little bit about some of the information we were trying to do last month. I kind of wanted to do some of the comparisons with our schools compared to the schools in our region. So in the 5th region, we have 38 elementary schools. Out of those in the elementary school, our schools come in at 24th at Boston. Cox's Creek comes in at 28th. Bloomfield comes in at 31. False Heights comes in at 37. And New Haven comes in at 38. Very last, dead last. In the 5th region, middle schools, there's 30 middle schools. Boston comes in 12th, which is our best example, only yellow, that was the colors. Bloomfield comes in 21st. My old Kentucky Home comes in 28th. And New Haven comes in 30 again, dead last. In our 5th region, high schools, there's 20 high schools. Nelson County comes in 18th. Thomas Nelson comes in 20th, dead last. Again, sending New Haven kids that way. To give an idea of the grades, I'm just going to do 3rd through 8th because it gets too long and I ain't got enough time. So third grade math, 52% of them in math get novice. 31% get apprentice, 15% proficient, and 2% are distinguished. In reading, 45% are novice, 31% are apprentice, 17% are proficient, 7% are distinguished. Fourth grade math, 55 are novice, 27 apprentice, 15 proficient, 3% distinguished. Reading, 47 novice, 27 apprentice, 21 proficient, 4 distinguished. Fifth grade, 43% novice, 33% apprentice, 22% proficient, 2% distinguished. Reading, 43% novice, 28% apprentice, 22% proficient, 7% distinguished. Sixth grade, 36% novice, 34% apprentice, 24% proficient, 5% distinguished. Reading, 33% novice, 32% apprentice, 24% proficient, and 10% distinguished. Goes on and on. No need going through, keep going. Across the board, our schools are failing. We're flat last, down at the bottom of the barrel. And so you got to say it's across the whole organization. And I'm a business guy. So in business, when you got a problem in research and development, you go to research and development, you try to see what's going on. Well, we got a leadership problem, and what are you going to do about it?
Thank you very much. Okay. Our next item on our agenda is, our monthly agenda. Sorry, the time's up. I'm sorry, the time is up. Our next item on our agenda is our monthly consent agenda. And that involves a monthly finance report, leaves of absence, minutes from previous meeting, fundraiser request, overnight out-of-state field trip request. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Jackie. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Our next item is our annual state and federal compliance. First one is under A is our personnel notification, which there is no action. We have already, we have privy to that. No action taken. Our next is student-teacher agreement. That is Whitney Klein and Shelby Cundiff.
Hello. This is just an annual agreement, an MOA. This will allow us to place student teachers in our buildings for the 23-24 school year with 3 universities. So we're just asking tonight that you approve these MOAs to allow student teachers to be in our buildings for the 23-24 school year.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Norman, do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jackie. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, ladies. Our next item is our mental health MOA, and that will be Amanda Tucker and Stacy Holderman.
Good evening. So tonight, our first item up here is an interagency agreement with Heartland Youth Village. Heartland Youth Village is a new facility in Nelson County. They will have 24 residents, and this interagency agreement allows us to partner and collaborate with the Heartland Youth Village to be the educational provider for those residents. This agreement allows us not only to have teachers there, but to also collaborate in partnership, thinking through the educational needs of those 24 residents. I'll let Stacey talk about the MOAs.
All right, good evening. This is my second time to come before the board and talk, so I'm excited to be here with you all tonight. We have 3 additional MOAs to talk about, and they're all from colleges across the state, and that speaks to the good work I think that we're doing in mental health across the district. So I'm excited to share that we have Campbellsville University School of Theology, their marriage and family therapy program, who wants to partner with us. We have Eastern Kentucky University's sociology, School of Sociology social work program. And then we also have Lindsay Wilson's professional counseling program students who want to partner with us. So that means that we will have interns who come into our school district and work within our mental health team to provide and meet needs of students, which is exciting. So we ask for your support with these MOAs, please.
So before we ask for your vote, I think this is Stacy's second time with us, and I think the work that this district and this leadership has committed to mental health and the growth that we've had, over 1,000 therapeutic notes that Stacy and I met about yesterday. So I just want to celebrate Stacy Hoderman as our mental health coordinator for the district, because she's doing a great thing for our students.
Quick question. So as looking through those 4 MOAs, the bottom 3, as I read through them, they seem more to be along the lines of like the student-teacher type of MOA, people coming into the district, actually assisting with some of the mental health work, but it's also something that's required for their university work. First one is more of us providing the services to that Heartland youth group home, I think?
Yes, that's right. The first one is more about academic support and teaching. Okay. And then the next 3 MOAs are more about mental health support.
Ms. Tucker, can you elaborate on their daily routine, what would happen, what we discussed about education-wise, who's responsible for what?
Sure. So when we think about Heartland Youth Village, we are the educational agency that will be supporting those students. So that looks like teachers and a counseling administrative role as we think through different evaluations and meetings that those residents would require. So as far as Nelson County Schools' responsibility, it is for the educational services of those residents, and that is our only responsibility.
And the Astra, what's their responsibility?
So it's not Astra.
I'm sorry.
It is Heartland Youth Village.
Yes.
Their responsibility, they are the resident, so they are doing the mental health services for those residents. They are doing the intake. They're doing the referral to other agencies. They are their home. They're their resident. So we are going in as that only.
Okay. That's what I wanted to make
Yes,
sure
ma'am.
everybody understood. We are not responsible for them as opposed explaining to be their bodyguards or to be their security. We're only to be their educational guides, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. With that being said, I need a motion to approve the agreement and mental health MOAs as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Norman. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Jackie. I have a motion. Can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have grant applications and acceptance, and that's from Ms. Karen Lee.
Good evening. This evening, we are going to begin with permission to apply for some grants that are currently open. Currently, the facility repair grant is available to licensed child care centers to address issues related to things such as fencing, ceiling tiles, et cetera, that are identified as needs in the facility. So we are asking for permission to apply for a facility repair grant in each of our child care centers, which are all of our elementary sites.
Okay, any questions? Do I hear a motion to accept the grant application decision?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bowling. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Deaton. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Next grant.
Okay. We also are asking to apply for 3 more grants. The first being the Stop School Violence Grant, and this is a large school trauma-informed care grant, and it would serve the entire district. It's a federal grant program offered by the Department of Justice, and it provides services in mental health care for students. So as you are aware, we have the school-based mental health grant and also another Department of Justice mental health grant that funds Ms. Holderman's salary. And we're seeking additional funds to provide even more mental health care services. That would be under the Stop School Violence Grant. The Stronger Connections Grant is similar to that. It's offered by the Kentucky Department of Education, and it also would provide direct mental health services to students. As you can tell, this is quite a trend currently to address the needs that are existing in our country with our youth since the pandemic. And if you'd like have any questions, since those two are related.
Any questions? Okay, I need a motion to accept our grant, approve the grant acceptance as presented.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jackie. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Ms. One more.
One more. The Reading Diagnostic Grant is offered by the Kentucky Department of Education to provide Tier 2 and Tier 3 reading intervention training and curriculum and materials for our elementary schools. And so 4 of our schools have chosen to apply based upon their current need and readiness for those. That includes New Haven, Boston, Bloomfield, and Foster Heights. And so we are seeking permission to apply for the Reading Diagnostic and Intervention grants. Those are for up to $40,000 per school.
Okay, I need a motion to grant permission to apply for a reading grant.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Love that. Thank you.
Mr. Norman, thank you. Do I hear?
Just quick question,
Okay.
because I want to make sure that I'm not missing some. Oh, I think Superintendent Bradley just pointed to me. That is within that first top section?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, next we have 21st Century Grants. And so I believe you are aware that we currently have 21st Century Community Learning Center programs funded through grants at Foster Heights, New Haven, and Boston schools. So in the fall, I came before you and asked for permission to apply for 21st Century Community Learning Center grants to serve Thomas Nelson High School and Nelson County High School. And we were selected to receive both of those programs for our district. The value of those grants is $675,000 per school spread across the next 5 years. And these create after-school and summer learning programs for our high school students. So I'm asking you to accept those grant awards.
I can't imagine us not accepting them, but yeah. Do I hear a motion to accept the 21st Century Community Learning Center grants?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And if I could point out one thing, Mr. Bradley, if you could click NCS Active Grants. This is that cumulative slide where we show the grants and where we currently are as of April 2023. And our total over less than 4 years is $20,405,000 in cash.
Great job. Great job. Thank you. Okay. Our next item in E is site-based decision-making allocation. Jessica Rogers.
You can remember a couple of months ago, I came with the tentative allocations and asked for your approval. Now we're just back with the final allocations. We've examined the enrollment projections further. We've met with all of the principals, and we've come up with these. Can you click on the summary?
You want me to click on it?
Yeah, the summary allocations, please. I thought Kristen was doing it, sorry.
So has anything changed since our last conversation with the board on this?
A couple of schools have been allocated an extra teacher, but nobody has gone down. And these are only Section 4, 5, and 7 teacher allocations. It does not include Title I, ESSER, diverse learning teachers. There's a lot more positions in the schools than just this. These are just the positions that are funded by site-based decision
making councils. The Section 4, Section 5, and Section 7. And then the Section 6 that is given to each school, $100 per pupil, is on here as well. And we're just asking for your approval tonight of these allocations.
So I think it's important for us to understand, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, Ms. Rogers. So the allocation of staff, not the, I believe you used the term extra staff.
Right.
It could be special ed, gift to, it's based upon student enrollment numbers, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And Alex Martin has been working very hard to project these for next year.
Okay.
And that's what we've based them upon. And these are the final projections for this year, but we will reevaluate the actual enrollments before September 15th.
Okay.
And we would never take an allocation away. We would only add an additional teacher if need be.
And actually, that's where I was going to go with that. If I remember correctly, that is sometime in early mid-September that there's a second look leading those first 3 or 4 weeks worth of school, a second look to see if numbers across school buildings have shifted any up. Only up. We don't necessarily look to see that they go down. We recognize if it does go down, but it doesn't take away a teacher, as you said.
No.
Because I know there has been discussion about just adding additional teachers in certain school buildings, and for equity across the buildings, it's ensuring that we fund them in a similar way across all school buildings.
Yes. It is based on enrollment, and then Section 7 is based on enrollment plus the unique needs of each building. I mean, sometimes there are different needs for each building.
Sure, and I know too, this is titled SBDM, Site-Based Decision-Making Allocations, which I think, again, and maybe in discussions we've had at board meetings, some in the community have started to recognize and make those connection pieces. It's actually the decision of that school's SBDM then, how they will allocate those teaching positions that this funds. So it's not that this board says, oh, you're going to have a 5th grade teacher or a English language arts teacher. It is that SBDM working along with their principal that makes those decisions.
Yes, we try to give each school autonomy so they can make a decision what works best for their school.
Well, because they're the ones that know what is needed within their school building. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it works a little different for the K-8 because I know I was talking to Boston a few weeks ago, and it may have changed since we originally looked at this. Like they're losing a middle school teacher. They're not technically losing a middle school teacher, but they're not allocated. So I think last year we were allocated 4, this year we're allocated 3. So I want people to really think about that when they look at the wonderful work that Ms. Rogers and our SBDM councils do to make sure that our schools are staffed. And it's not as easy as it looks. Again, we were telling our middle school, our K-8 at Boston, you get 3 middle school teachers, but teach 4 subjects. Now, they're going to make it work, don't get me wrong, because that's what they do, because they're wonderful people, and they want to make sure the kids are taught.
Yes.
But think about that, and, I'm sure most of you all have been inside your schools to start talking, because I'm pretty sure most of our schools lost a teacher this year. So might be time to sit in on an SBDM meeting.
So the only question I have is just regarding the librarian. We have like a .2.
Yes, we only have 2 that go to every school.
What is the reason for that? Why have we not allocated more for librarians?
In 2019, 2020, the board chose to reallocate some of our librarians to instructional leaders in the school, known as backpack leaders, who were teaching classes. To be frank, the major challenge at that time was the lack of agility with certification with librarians. There's not enough certified librarians in the state of Kentucky. Also, principals and the district at that time are looking at ways to increase instructional leadership. And that was one way to do that, or to be more agile. So backpack leaders in our schools were really a reallocated media specialist.
Well, and I think wasn't part of it also, Superintendent Bradley, that it was taking I'm going to generically call it, the books that sit on a shelf in a room that we take kids to once a week maybe, taking those books, putting them in the classrooms where those kids have access to them every day.
It looks a little different in every school. Some schools are still utilizing a traditional library. Other schools have moved books into the classrooms, especially some of our middle and high schools. So they've transitioned a lot of those books that's, as an example, books related to history in some of our history classes, and some of our books related to literature into the English classes, so students are more likely to see and interact with them. But it varies by school. It's an example of how do you increase something that you want, which at that time was thinking about reimagining instruction and instructional leadership, and taking about $500,000 and doing that in a way that wasn't going to cost the district. Like anything, you make sacrifices. Media specialists, traditionally, I think before the internet, were playing a role that looked a little different. After the internet, I think many of them are teachers, right? And in most districts, media specialists are teachers, and I think that's really what we have reallocated towards.
Any other questions? Okay, that being said, I do
want to make one comment. There's part of the campaign to smear Nelson County schools is talk a lot about our enrollment. And to be clear, our enrollment's up this year. And we don't have the numbers for next year, but our enrollment has been steady. And I think that's something important to know is enrollment in nearly all of our schools doesn't impact these numbers currently. There are a couple of schools that have had some population shift over the last decade that have slowly impacted those numbers. But I just want to be clear with everyone in the audience that enrollment in our schools is relatively stable. We do expect over the next 5 to 10 years for that to ebb and flow at times.
In terms of enrollment, though, is that factoring in preschoolers that weren't counted in enrollment prior, Wes?
No.
Okay.
No. The only two schools we've had unique challenges with enrollment is Bloomfield Elementary School and Bloomfield Middle School. And that's just a coincidence. It really had nothing to do with the facility plan. The student age population in Bloomfield has decreased over the last 10 years, more remarkably, for whatever reason. We don't, we're not specialists in that. We just see it in our numbers. I think as we look at this, the only schools that really are impacted are those schools that may have a shift in enrollment. We would prefer, obviously, if every school was stable and that we could continue to staff those schools in a way that allows them to have 5 to 10 year guarantees for program building. But the enrollment shifts in any school do impact the way they're staffed, just from an equity standpoint as we look at state policy and some of the district policies.
Okay. Okay, that being said, I need a motion to approve the 2023-2024 final site-based allocation as presented.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jackie. I need a second.
I'll second.
Ms. Bowling, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next is Ms. Rogers also, the second KT offer of assistance.
A couple of months ago, I came with the first offer of assistance, and that one we accepted. And this one is our second offer. It's $37,111.50. Basically, if we agree to pledge that amount, they give us that amount towards technology, so we double our investment in our children and the technology for our schools. So today, I just ask you for permission to accept this offer of assistance.
Okay, are there any comments? No. That being said, I need a motion to accept the offer of assistance in the amount of $37,111.50 to be matched equally at this time.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Norman. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. Second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next one, bid approvals by also Ms. Rogers.
Choose the. We accepted bids in March for diesel and gasoline, for paving, and for pest control. Each one of the bids was opened in front of an audience, and they were compared. And as you can see, The yellow are the bids that we are asking you to accept for the fiscal year 2024 school year. We only had 1 for pest control, and then we had 4 for paving, and I believe 5 for diesel and gasoline.
On the paving slide, bid package 5, I guess it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a particular reason? I mean, it's $300, but is there a particular reason with, it looks like Mago winning several of them, that Mago also wasn't chosen for number 5?
4 and 5 went together.
Oh, okay.
And so we save quite a bit of money going with 4 and 5.
That makes sense. Okay.
Okay, any other comment or question? Do I have a motion to approve the bid awards for fiscal year 2024 for diesel and gasoline, pest control, and paving?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jackie. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Deaton. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next, Ms. Rogers and also Shelby Kunda for the salary schedules and job descriptions.
This is, I should have added my name to the list. I'll start off the conversation just with the broad conversation that we had over the last 4 or 5 weeks. So as we look to the future of financial planning, a big part of that is also acknowledging the past. I think a good example was thinking about reallocating was just a small thing, but it was a large shift, was the salaries while also working within a uniquely inefficient financial system because of the size of our schools. I share that to talk briefly too about the 4-year commitments that we've made. And as we think about tonight and we talk about salary increases on the salary schedule, we have to contextualize that over the past 4 years. The average teacher in the Nelson County Schools has received an 11% increase since 2019. For classified team members, that raise has been closer to 30 to 50% depending on your job. And much of that was to allow for really a livable and sustainable wage in roles that weren't necessarily providing that, especially as we moved into this hyperinflation mode that we currently live in. Additionally, we committed to a number of items in 2019, 2020, pre-pandemic, and really we're moving into some of these systems in our first year as we look at literacy and nurses in every building. That cost currently is approximately $1.5 million we were not spending prior to 2019 and 2020 school year. Really, the nurses came along with the pandemic and have been a remarkable addition to our school. They do come with a cost. Additionally, we've made significant commitments to leadership development and the work that's going on in our schools. We provided a full-time assistant principal to our schools in 2019, 2020. Many of our schools did not have full-time assistant principals up to that time. Then we extended assistant principals to be 240-day employees in 2021. We realized that the principals couldn't work alone. And that's something that we want to continue to think about as we think about retaining and growing leaders in the Nelson County Schools. At that same time, and this is the part that's really broken, is we've lost and we'll lose $4.5 million from the state by 2023, 2024. And that's really a byproduct of property values increasing in Nelson County based on our local PVA assessments. That's out of the board's control. It's out of the community's control. It's important that you recognize that. How do you increase $5 million in strategic commitments while losing, at this point in time, $3.3 million, which will be potentially $4.5 million next year? And the way that has increased is through local revenue. Without question, while our tax rate has gone down since 2019, our tax rate's gone down almost 4 cents, we are generating significantly more revenue to offset these losses. The bourbon boom that exists and some of the other realities that we face in Nelson County have benefited everyone in terms of their tax rate. At the same time, if your property values increase, your payment to any government entity increases with that. Ultimately, we are pursuing sustainable growth solutions. We are in a unique situation where the only way we continue to increase and increase salaries and ensure that we're competitive in a region where a teacher or an educator can move in multiple directions and have a wage that is potentially higher, unlike many of the counties in Kentucky, because of where we are geographically located. We know we want to continue to provide higher wages for employees into the future. We also know that the state and the legislature probably are not going to change the SEEK formula anytime soon, even though we will be advocating for major shifts in that in the year ahead. So with that in mind, that's a big part of our facility planning process as we talk tonight. We know that because of the size of our schools, because of the layout of our district, we are uniquely costly in the way we provide services. And in order to continue to optimize and become more efficient year after year, we do have to unify resources and or make cuts to schools. With that in mind, our strategic priorities, we like it. Our strategic priorities this year really come from our needs assessment. We want to continue to commit to next generation professionals. That includes a increase on the salary schedule of a 2% raise for all employees years 1 through 10. This also comes with a 1.75% step that's naturally occurring based on experience. Additionally, a 1.5% raise for all employees years 11 through 20. That includes a 1.5% step as well, meaning that would be a 3% raise for those employees. And lastly, a 1% raise for all employees years 21 plus. Secondly, we're also offering professionals across the district an additional opportunity in the summer to contribute to learning design and leadership pathways. Currently, that rate is a $3,000 stipend for those that participate. And lastly, one of the things we are asking for approval is something that we're doing as we continue to think about agility with the teachers, and that is what we're calling an Amazon backpack that allows every teacher $500 annually that they can use through their Nelson County Schools Amazon account, which many of them, well, they shouldn't have at this point, but would have. That $500 can be spent on professional learning and curriculum supplies, in addition to resources that they can purchase to their own account. That is approved by the school bookkeeper and would be delivered to the school, just to be clear. At the same time, on the right side are the checks and balances. We cannot increase without decreasing. And the next 2 years in the Nelson County Schools, there will be lots of unique checks and balances as the federal funding continues to phase out by 2024, 2025. And we will be optimizing at the rate of a reduction in $800,000 in general fund staffing in total. That includes a 2.5% reduction at the local schools and a 10% reduction in centralized services. That also really includes what we've been providing as a part of our federal funding through ESSER money and a reduction of $630,000. It's forcing schools locally to be more agile in how they use funding through Title I and other sections where they may have revenue. We're also allowing schools the freedom to carry forward money into next year that gives them more agility into the future, something that typically doesn't occur, but we are allowing to occur to continue to provide schools some flexibility that can benefit them into the future. Lastly, we want to continue to think about operational efficiencies. This is really a minimal number. We're looking at a $400,000 minimum reduction in operational costs while also continuing to ensure strong quality of life. For example, we can't reduce cleaning, maintenance services. They are basic quality of life. We can't reduce transportation services. We're already at our kind of minimum threshold there. So those are the things that won't be impacted from that. We'll hear more about those pieces in the budget in May and again in August and September as we continue to shift and look at how we can reallocate resources. I share this globally because behind this salary schedule that is presented tonight are all these assumptions. All these beliefs about what matters as we look strategically and how we can continue to be responsible with checks and balances. So I share that as a global conversation before we get into really pretty simple, some tables with numbers in them that is the salary schedule and job descriptions. Any questions about this financial planning process? I know we've talked about it a little bit over the last month, and it's really, I think, a part of a larger conversation that will continue.
Any questions, comments?
So maybe just a quick clarification, because I know whenever you had shared this in a conversation you and I had the left side, item 3, individual professional growth. I know a lot of times society talks about it's a shame that teachers are having to spend money out of their own pocket, whether it is for professional growth, whether it is for materials in the classroom, whatever the case might be. That's sort of what this is intended for, is to help offset some of that, not only for their own professional growth, finding things that they need for themselves to become a better educator and become better at the craft, but also even for the materials that they may need to help make that happen in the classroom.
Really, what the feedback we received from teachers was the time it takes to fill out a purchase order was something they just didn't have. So this allows them right here on their phone, on their Amazon app, to look and study and have it delivered right to the school. It's just one more way we're trying to be more intelligent users of our revenue and empower teachers. To be honest, we'll learn from it next year if this is approved, and then into the future, we determine more what other ways we can continue to be more empowering and agile with professionals in our district.
So what I hear is it's a way that we can honor the limited time that they already have, so that they can get what they need easier, quicker, real time.
We hope.
Yeah.
And not their money.
Right, and not their money, because generally if you move fast, you spend your own money, and that's really what we want to.
And I'm not naive to think that they're not spending more than $500 a year. Trust me, I see what these teachers are spending.
And so, Wes, in terms of the staffing reduction, there's going to be a cost saving. Is that letting people go, or is that the result of people that are already retiring or whatnot?
It looks different at every school. I think as it's no secret that there's a labor challenge in every field that exists currently. The reality of someone, let's say, being let go is very low in the current environment. That could happen at a school because they're making choices. Our goal, as it states here, is really that we want to continue to retain high-performing employees across the district. And if someone, in theory, is shifted from a school, we want to be able to provide them opportunities at another school. That is not universal in that all people may retain every position they're currently in, but there are opportunities for them to do that.
I think part of the reality on this, too, is for many teachers, that retirement number is still 27. 27 years. I know some of the younger teachers coming in with changes the legislature has made, it has upped that number some. Whenever we've got teachers that are in year 22, 23 of a career, I don't know that I can blame them for them to start thinking about their retirement years because of how long they live, how long we live as humans anymore. And for them to be able to go to Jefferson County and make $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 more per year to go towards those high 3, that's part of that exodus that we have of staff. And you know, we end up at times then with a younger set of staff here, which then does mean there's a lower cost per teacher. I mean, some of that will end up happening as well. And I cannot blame a teacher that will say, I've got to think about retirement. I've got to get my high 3. Or I talked to a teacher just this week that is a single parent that said, I had to go to Jefferson County for my children. I had to go there because I was able to make 20 grand more per year. And there's no way and not that we're not worth it as educators, but there is no way in this community that we can pay every teacher an extra $20,000 a year. It just is not sustainable.
I think it's important that, you know, every teachers leave just like people leave jobs for a variety of reasons. Sometimes that maybe is for additional compensation. The reality is, and again, I'm just going to call it for what it is, while people love to paint a picture that, you know, teacher retention is an issue, and it's something that I think we're seeing internally stability with. While we'll have teachers that will transition out this year, we really, in spite of all the unique chaos we've had, we feel pretty stable with teachers right now. But we want to continue to humanize the work and ensure that we are being transparent and supportive as we look towards the future of what it means to be an educator in Kentucky and the United States.
I also would like to add that some of this is just about moving funds, switching funds, maybe take some stress off the general fund and use Title I funds or another grant, something like that. It's not always about just cutting the position. It's sometimes just about the funding, especially in using our money in the most wise way.
And by that, I assume you mean that we could pay for this teacher out of general fund, but this other fund also allows for that type of teacher to be paid from it, and that's Title I or some other funding mechanism.
Absolutely,
Okay.
and just making sure that we're using our money wisely and responsibly.
Okay, any other comment or question?
So the salary schedule process, we just do want to acknowledge that. It's a little, the salary schedule and job description, they were just going to explain the process that we went through to get to where we are.
It really goes along with the allocations as well, because we started out with one big conversation with principals, and then we did the tentative allocations, and then HR and myself and Alex met with each principal some 2 times. We talked about their budget, we talked about their funding, we went through their staff, we did strategic staffing that way. It was very valuable for the teachers, for the principals to understand where the funds come from, and that was a big process that we went through for this. Want to talk about the job salary?
So we sent out a slide deck with all of the current job descriptions for the current school year, and we were looking ahead to the 23-24 school year. And we asked department heads and leads to collaborate within their teams to just think about any changes that they would like to make to the job descriptions. And the HR team and Jessica, that was a heavy collaboration, just going through all of the job descriptions, making sure everyone's retirement was okay, class codes, just looking through responsibilities, making sure everything aligned with what the position was called. And that was I would say that was probably a 5 to 6 week process, just kind of going through job descriptions and with a fine tooth, just making sure that we really weren't missing anything.
And it's plausible that in May and June, we may have to revisit a few pieces because there's always some moving parts that you might miss. Especially as you think about reorganizing things that just pop up. I just want to make that clear. There could be other things that come in the months ahead.
There usually is, little small things, a tweak or what.
I'm sorry.
Is that it?
And as Wes spoke about earlier, in the salary schedule, if you approve that salary schedule, you are approving a 1% raise for 0 through 10 step, 2%, sorry, a 1.5% for 11 through 20, and a 1% raise for 21 years and up. We also added a raise for classroom substitutes. We have a scale where we have certified subs, certified teachers, retired teachers. Each one of those went up for $20 a day. They are paid on a daily rate, either half day or whole day. And we wanted to be more competitive for substitutes. We always need subs.
We always do.
We always need subs, so we're hoping that helps.
Yep. Okay, any other? That being said, I need a motion to approve the fiscal year of 2024 salary schedules and job descriptions as presented. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. I have a brain fog right here. Okay, hold on. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank
you
you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers and Ms. Cotton.
Okay, our next on our agenda is the CSI School Improvement Plans. Superintendent Bradley.
So just some context, I know that these particular conversations have drawn lots of unique rhetoric in the community. I do want to say, firstly, how proud we are of the work going on at all of our schools, and especially at New Haven and Foster Heights, as they have if the teams at Foster Heights and New Haven are guilty of anything, what they're most guilty of is thinking about the future of student needs and how to be creative and innovative in that process. I think it's also important to know that for those of you that go to ChatGPT, if you haven't downloaded it, I encourage you to on your phone or on your computer. If you go to ChatGPT and type in, how can you increase state test scores? It will give you a number of answers, and they're pretty good. The first answer that it will tell you is that you should align your curriculum to the test. The second thing it will tell you is that you should be sure to review and prepare for the test. And the one thing that we certainly have been guilty of in the Nelson County schools is going beyond those precedents. And Mr. Hill and Ms. Clark, while imperfect like myself, have taken this process and turned it into something really valuable for their staff. These school improvement plans that they're reviewing tonight, that are part of a larger conversation going on at their schools, are really just a small part of the human process they're going through locally to continue to shape that foundation towards literacy and math at the early grade levels, and continue to think about how to be creative for students in looking at enduring skills that go beyond what ChatGPT will tell you is important to prepare for the test. And don't get me wrong, the skills on many of our tests are important skills, but there's another narrative out there. And one of the things that we have not done, and I won't say we've not done it well, I just say we've not done it, is talk about this. In our schools, and I'm not saying we're not doing it now, I'm not saying we are doing it now, we've not said state test, state test, state test. Mr. Hill and Ms. Clark last year never said to their staff, state test. They didn't say it. So guess what? It's unlikely that their kids and their teachers were focused on the state test. We have nothing to hide in the Nelson County schools. In fact, what we are doing is being true to ourselves and continuing to think about the future of education. If those of you are interested about the report for Foster Heights School, the district, or the New Haven School, want to learn more about it, we have a 30-page document over here that's a response to it in the Kentucky Department of Education. That 30-page report will be shared publicly with all of you, and that 30-page report will tell you about what the Kentucky Department of Education says, well, the group of 4 people that were in our conversations, and what our district has. This is the 30-page document right here. And this document will be posted, shared. I would love for those of you that want to weaponize these reports to come back in May and tell us all about what you learned in our review of these reports. If we were guilty of anything in the auditing process, what we were most guilty of was telling them the whole truth, that we did not focus on state tests. I stand here before you as an educator that has had high state test scores, that has put students behind the test, that has taken a testing system and manipulated it to look good in the newspaper, that has taken a testing system and said, hey, we're topping the state. Let's have a party. Let's give our kids drinks and cream pies. That's a true story. And guess what? We did well. And when our kids walked across the stage at graduation, we had failed them because they had no relationship to people in their community. They had no sense of connection to real work. We had held them hostage to ensure that we're going to look good on that state ranking. And boy, we looked great. This past year, both of our high schools, well, this year we're in right now, both of our high schools will have almost 95% of their students transitional ready to graduate high school. And the truth is, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible for the future of high school students. And we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. And the other truth is, our test scores this year will go up. And next year, they'll go up again. But we're still scratching the surface of what's possible as we look at what's in the best interest of every student in our school. And if we should be guilty of anything over the next year, it is honoring the reality that the future of education demands more for individual students than ranking and sorting and calling you a novice, an apprentice, a proficient, or a distinguished, because it's going to be a lot more than that. And my goal was not to say this. My goal was not to cut Mr. Hill, Ms. Clark off at all. But I think it's really important that people understand we're not hiding anything. We've been clear for the last few years where we stand on this. We've written articles about it. We've talked about it. We have nothing to hide. And when the Kentucky Department of Education and the 4 or 5 people that came into our district office that we would have probably never hired to work at our district ever said, when they said these things, we're not focused on student assessment or student performance, and we shared our community-based accountability process with them, just what Cox's Creek said tonight, and they said, we're not focused on student performance. What they mean is we weren't focused on state test performance. They just left that line out of the report. That's called politics. And that is the problem with the world we live in, is that's what's impacted the report. Do we have foundational issues and need for growth? Absolutely, we have need for growth. Do we have to continue to increase rigor in our schools? Absolutely, we have to increase rigor in our schools. Do we have to continue to raise expectations across the board? Absolutely, we do. But don't get too caught up in these reports. Mr. Hill, Ms. Clark, feel free to go ahead. So, is there a presentation here? So really what we're doing tonight as a board, and I apologize for that rant, but it was needed. It was needed for me as an ethical person. And I'm truly not trying to be political, I'm trying to be truthful. And I want you guys to be able to be truthful in honoring the reality of these improvement priorities in your schools. What we're asking of the board tonight is to approve the revised school improvement plan that was already submitted in October from Foster Heights and New Haven, and also to approve the Kentucky Department of Education as the turnaround provider between really August 20th and probably October 5th. One of the things that's unique about this process is it's such a thoughtful process that when these students take the test this year and they score no longer CSI status, KDE leaves the building immediately. It's a part of the process. So KDE, we expect them to be supporting, and they have been very supportive. And you guys have built a great relationship with them. They'll be in the building from August 25th to about October 1st of next year. That's what we expect. So you're proving that they're the turnaround provider, and that is a part of this conversation that must be approved by the local Board of Education, along with the school improvement process. These two things, by law, have to be approved by the Board of Education. Again, my apologies for the rant. The batteries run out of it, apparently.
Oh, wait. It works. Sorry. It wasn't green. So first, we also, Jeremy and I have talked about this, we also want to stress to you guys the importance of the timely manner in approving these CSIP, or the school improvement plans, because that does lead to the additional funding that we have prepared for beginning July 1. So Again, we'll answer any questions, any conversations, but that is very important.
Especially if the plans involve hiring additional staff. We would like to be able to do that sooner rather than later. So there is a little bit of urgency with which we're asking to look at these plans.
So one of the pieces that's important to acknowledge is that part of being a CSI school is you do receive additional revenue from the federal government. That's a part of the 2016 Every Student Succeeds Act that the Obama administration put in. This is 7 years later continuing to enact that process. And that money is significant. It's significant money, and it will be for the next 3 years.
Yes, so you create, based on our priority plans, we create how we want to utilize that funding. We actually have to identify that pretty quickly. We're working on those things, Jeremy and I both actually together in some of those things, so that we begin in July and you have a certain amount of time. You cannot move that money forward or anything like that. It has to be spent rather quickly in regards to that. So I'll go back to something that should be very familiar to you. When we spoke the last time prior to the audit, we did discuss the priorities at the New Haven School in regards to where we were as a staff and how we were moving forward. Again, if you were in our buildings, as we've alluded to several times, to come in and join us and see these processes, you would see these things through our PLCs, in our classrooms, any of those. So if you are interested in those, again, we welcome you every single day. A big piece of this, again, is going back to clarity, making sure our teachers understand what the standards are telling them, what it looks like to be successful with those standards, and then assessing, determining what comes next, and starting the process all over. So things that we started back in probably November and that are still continuing with, our first priority would be lesson and assessment alignment to the standards, while also looking at deeper learning experiences. Again, some of those allude to our challenge teams and what that mapping looks like. The other component being signals of success. So Cox's Creek did a great job when they started talking about their data dashboard. That's the signals of success. How are we determining that our students are successful in these areas versus that one assessment that we don't even get results for until the next year? We'll have accountability structures set up for that we've begun and that we will continue. Honestly, if there are questions in regards to those priorities, I can go in detail. I just don't want to go through the whole process since I presented it to you 4 weeks ago. Any questions in regards to our priorities and what those things look like in our school?
So a question that's for clarification, another one that's kind of just a question that I'm wondering about. So the clarification one, and I think you said it just then, Ms. Clark, about when the test scores do come back. So the students who, I think is it within the last 6 weeks of the school year, is the new standard says that the last 6, last 4, whatever the time frame is when they take the state test.
Within the last 2 weeks of school.
Thank you.
3
last
weeks.
2 weeks. I knew it had changed. It used to be the whole state took it at the exact same time frame, which meant those that had more days of school afterwards, the students didn't have as much instruction happening before the test as other districts. So the students, and I think Olivia and Leona and some of the others that Miss Victory introduced us to at the beginning, they'll be taking that test the middle part of May, but Cox's Creek will not get those test results back until probably late September, early October.
October, typically.
Okay, which then ties into the August 25th, October 1st time frame that Mr. Bradley was talking about, that, you know, there's a level of confidence that test scores will go up and that we'll only have whoever that vendor is between August 25th and October 1st.
Yes, and if you spoke with them, they would actually tell you that they wish they could stay longer. They're enjoying their time at New Haven.
Okay, so that then leads into my actual question. So looking at the document that we're going to approve, it says, you know, pursuant to the certain KRS, identifying the following vendor, and we've got a choice to make as a school district. And the two choices are the Kentucky Department of Education, or it says another vendor from the Kentucky Board of Education's approved turnaround vendor list, blah, 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 blah. So my question is, if, based upon what Mr. Bradley was just sharing with us about potential flaws, concerns, I don't know the right word to use in that report, why would we pick Kentucky Department of Education?
So there's a good reason for that.
Okay.
I'm like, do you want
That's
us
what
to be
I'm looking
honest
for.
in this answer?
Mr. Hill and Ms. Clark can answer that.
That would be money. So, department, again, I hope that was, so we're allocated money. Department of Education is free. So we can spend that allocated money on resources for our teachers, times for planning, after school, any of those things, professional learning. Again, not that we would or wouldn't go with KDE, but in conversation with Mr. Hill and I, again, we've built those relationships with those people. They've become part of our staff. They involve themselves in before and after school and working with our kids and our teachers. So we felt like that, again, money, but also
It's not a small amount of money, to be clear. It's a couple $100,000.
Yeah, so that starts to make sense to me then. I know back in the beginning of CARA, 91, 2, 3, 4, whenever the high stakes assessment was starting to come around, I remember back then that there were schools that were incentivized by money, that if you met a certain benchmark on the state test, you got money, and some of those schools handed out that money to teachers. Talk about a nightmare in that. Oh, if I make sure my kids can do better on the test, I'm going to get more money. And that led to lots of inappropriate types of activities that were occurring for those test administrators, that phrase I used earlier on whenever I was talking with students. So it does make sense then that if we don't have to pay for the vendor being KDE, then 100% of those funds, we've got a choice of how we use them to make those changes.
Well, and just to add, part of that also is the confidence that we have in the work that we've already seen that our teachers and staff have engaged in, that we think would probably mitigate any potential flaws. We have the utmost confidence in our team and the work going on, and they're very inspired by what work's already occurred. And I've had the privilege of working closely with Ms. Clark. I've had the privilege of going to New Haven and seeing that work come alive there, in addition to the work with my team. And I feel we're very confident that our team is poised for great success, regardless of the vendor. So then it would make sense to at least be able to reap the benefits financially.
Well, in a for-profit vendor, you always have to wonder what their underlying rationale for certain things are.
Correct.
I'm happy that we're using the Department of Education, even if there was a choice between two that we had to pay for. I've heard good things from parents that have children in your schools, that there's been an improvement since they've been in there. So let me ask you, do you think since KDE has been in there, do you think there's been an improvement in the quality of maybe the education that you're able to provide to students in your schools?
no. So here's why. Because we began this work well before the department was here. Our local data, which we've discussed over and over, would already show those things. We have already assessment data. Parents are given that data every single year. If they show up for parent conferences, they are given the data on what that looks like. You guys have access to that. If you're in our buildings, if you show up to come to our buildings after being asked multiple times, then you would see those things come to life. If you're concerned about reading and writing and math, going into our classrooms and seeing our teachers teach, you would have full confidence as well to say, they never stop teaching reading, because that hasn't happened.
So Tiffany, tell me why you think your scores are going to go up this year then.
Because we are talking about the test. We are having, my daughter can attest to this, so now she looks at practice tests. We are talking to kids about, you work hard and we know what you can do, but these people need to see it in this format. So we are talking about it this time. I would say also consistency for me specifically, and Mr. Hill can talk about Foster Heights, the consistency with staff within our building, administration. Again, we have seen turnover year after year, administratively as well as teachers, prior to Mr. Bradley, prior to myself, in addition to, and again, I can talk my faults all day long. But with that, I think, again, the culture within our building, and that was something that in a report, if you read it, it talks about how strong our culture was. In order for a school to be successful, culture must come first. Your kids have to feel safe, your parents have to feel that, and your teachers have to feel supported. So that was a priority, and again, we didn't practice test-taking skills. We didn't address those things. We didn't talk about state assessment. We kind of showed up, we took the test, and we rolled on. And again, at my fault and my leadership, absolutely.
Tiffany, nobody on this board wants you guys to just study for a test. No, but if you know the standards, we ought to be able to wake up every day of the week at Nelson County High School because we know the standards and we can perform well on an assessment because of that. I mean, that's all we're asking for.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I also scored an 18 on my ACT, and I'm not sure if you remember, but back then, 18 wouldn't get you into college. So I had to do some additional things because we've spoke to that as well. However, I've got a master's, an EDS, lots of things, and I graduated from the same high school you did. If we talk about standards, I have no idea what my teacher standards were back then. Again, I'll go on. So
I think there is some valuable part of this conversation. I think there's some value in the last year. And Katie, if you think about summarizing really the value you've taken from the collaboration with the department, there has been, you guys have acknowledged that, and I think part of that
grant
is,
writing. They're really great at grant writing. They support us in that process. They help with things that may take up time, like I'm able to engage with teachers and students and be present in some of those things so that they can help us with, again, identifying for CSIP and those kinds of things. There's additional paperwork that comes with all of those things. They've been very supportive in that. If I have questions, again, those are conversations that we can have, but typically it's been people. So if we want to look at, again, helping create lessons, some of our teachers have reached out to say, hey, I'd love to have somebody else because, again, with our team, we can't always plan with them every single step of the way. So I think that has been beneficial. Again, just having additional people within our building, I think, has been an improvement. But no, I would not say specifically that KDE is what changed those things. I would say my administrative team is very strong in regards to that. My assistant principal instructionally has been an instructional coach as well, with experience in those things, who has also definitely benefited our school over the last year.
This is for Jeremy, okay? I know, but give him a chance. To my understanding, okay, let me rephrase this. Was the standards taught?
Yes. Now, in the manner in which they were taught were through the lens of project-based learning, especially within our intermediate grade levels. Were we perfect in project-based learning implementation? No, we were not. Our teachers worked their tails off. We reflect on our student learning experiences. We reflect on those things. We didn't wait for KDE nor the state test results to come out to say, we've got to take a step back and go deeper with deconstructing the standards and making sure that we're teaching them to the rigor level that's required. That work occurred last summer, long before we had access to the data.
And I think Mr. Hill just said it. Yeah, I think that's where the importance of the standard comes into play. There is a level of rigor that is implied or assumed within that standard, and I think that's a big part of the standards deconstruction process that I think we have gained a value from in our collaboration, and I think that's something too. I think that comes with some experience, and I would agree with the sentiment that's been shared about the need for additional supports for beginning teachers. And I think that's one of the things that this has helped, not KDE, but they've helped at least us all have better conversations about that.
Yeah, and 100%, just to piggyback on that, that's been, something that I will own. I did not supply our teachers with adequate resources to always do their job to the highest level. And that was my reflection, and that's my commitment to making sure I'm putting my teachers in positions to be successful. I asked so much of them because I didn't ask them to follow a script. I asked them to be creators and know their kids, know their gifts, know their passions, and design learning experiences aligned to those, which is very difficult work. They needed more support and resources from me, and that's something that we've provided.
Okay, what I'm getting at, though, too, when the standards, who sets the standards?
We teach the Kentucky Academic Standards.
That's right. So when you knew that you had to Teach the standards. Not teach the test, teach the standards. And it wasn't being done, correct?
No, I did not say that.
Okay, tell me what, yeah.
Our teachers have always taught standards. Now, it hasn't always been in sit and get format, in lecture format, but the standards do drive our instruction. Have we always taught them to the rigor level that's required? I will own that. No, we have not. No fault of our teachers. That's on my support of them to be able to understand the rigor level that's required.
Okay.
And I'll take ownership for that too, because I think that's a part of our larger conversations. How can we continue to up the ante for the rigor in all classrooms? And a part of that is it's an ongoing process. It never ends. I think we continue to see significant growth across our schools in those conversations.
Well, and another thing I think I'm good with is KDE, simply because it's not only because the other ones are expensive, it's because KDE started out with you and they know what you're doing, correct? And what's the sense of starting over again with an outside vendor that has no clue what Foster Heights needs or New Haven needs?
I just want to be clear, Foster Heights doesn't actually have anybody from KDE there, but New Haven does. That's important to recognize. So anybody that comes to Foster Heights will be a new person next year because currently there's no one there.
Well, you know what I mean. As opposed to paying $250,000 to have a vendor come in.
Right. I think that Ms. Clark and I both would support KDE being the vendor.
Yes. Okay.
Well, I want to say something myself. I mean, I've been to New Haven, and I've seen the hard work teachers have done here, and I just want to give a big thank you to them. I see you working hard. I see the passion in your eyes, but we got to teach reading, writing, and math. I know that's very simple, but we have to. I know y'all are trying hard. I see y'all working. I see y'all's frustration with everything, but keep up the good work. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Before you go on to your next, so I'm curious. I'm sitting here doing a little bit of timeline as I was listening to you. So the standardized test results that got us into this conversation were the ones we received in October-ish of 22.
Yes, sir.
That were, and I know it was different grades assessed different subject areas.
Correct.
And so I'll just pick reading. I think, isn't third grade a reading assessment grade?
Correct. Third, fourth, and fifth all assess reading.
So we got the standardized test results back October-ish of 22 that were about students, and I picked third grade as an example. There were about students who were third graders in the 21-22 school year. And as I keep working my way backwards in a timeline, they were second graders in 2021, first graders in 1920. We can keep going on the timeline. And I mean, I've got to ask you the elephant in the room. And it's something that polarizes society right now because some believe it happened and some don't. But first and second grade, those are the critical years for starting to get a foothold on reading and reading comprehension, that if you don't have that foundation, you will have challenges in the grades to come, correct?
Correct. There's a transformation from learning to read and then to reading to learn.
For reading for comprehension. So these students that we got these test results back in October of 22 who were taking the test in 21-22, they're COVID students.
Correct.
And I'm just like Superintendent Bradley said. I mean, I'm not going to make excuses. I mean, you know, it is what it is.
That's exactly what you're doing.
But I'd also like to ask. I mean, what's your opinion of, as those students were first and second graders and they were at home and the learning was occurring through a Google Meet or another virtual or relying upon that reading to occur at home? I mean, do you think that had an impact?
So I think it's not a result of our performance, but I think it definitely exposed some things. Okay. And I think that we were hit pretty hard with The challenge is because we didn't have instructional programs to rely upon in a time when our kids transitioned and weren't in our building. You know, the beauty of the work our teachers were engaged in creating those learning experiences, and we got caught with not having that resource to default to at a time when they greatly need that.
I mean, I'll say don't beat yourself up too much on that one, because I knew very, very good school districts whenever it came to what had been known as NTI, non-traditional instruction, which originally it was only intended to be able to offset some snow days, especially in eastern Kentucky, where they would have 15, 20 snow days a year, and school would go on into June. I know of some school districts in the central part of Kentucky who are, if we want to talk test scores, high performing on test scores. They were also very good at NTI, and between March 13th of 2020, that Friday, when everything just collapsed around us, and the end of that school year, I had many of them share with me that we didn't know what we didn't know about virtual learning.
And nobody
Mine is
holds you
in
guys to
addition
this.
to,
I'm sorry.
I was responding
I'm
to
sorry,
his
Ms.
question.
Dean, I'm listening to you.
So I would say, in regards to New Haven specifically, yes, there were several challenges. Again, that was also my first year, and I've learned through some failures. We also have to think about what our students did have access to. So within our population specifically, yes, COVID probably impacted us more so than others within our county, because our students do not have access. They may or may not have support.
Meaning internet access?
Internet access, we still don't. Even we did MiFis, but if you've got 5 kids and you're trying to stream a Google Meet, it didn't happen. I would say even transitioning back, you know, the accountability systems, I think with attendance and those things impacted us a little bit as well. To be honest, I was not the administrator during that time. However, I do know in talking with our teachers, the time they spent was making sure our students were fed and clothed and safe. So those are things that I think, yes, definitely impacted. Just like Jeremy said, though, I'm not sure that they had the resources to be able to provide online learning platforms, those kinds of things. And then again, we obviously didn't talk about the test when they returned.
Everyone
What I
understands,
just heard you say is that there were many variables that came to play on this.
Of course there were.
Yes.
And everyone understands that COVID affected everyone. And even if you threw out that particular group of students, because
That's
first and second
65%
grade,
of my kids.
even if you threw out that, the COVID,
65%.
the children learning to read in first and second grade in the midst of COVID, if you look at our other grades, the thing about this test is it compared it to everyone else in the state. Right. And that's the value of it, because COVID affected everyone, and I would expect our scores to be lower. They ought to be. It was very difficult on teachers and parents and students. It ought to be lower. But we need to look at where we are relative to everyone else in the state.
I agree. Do you know by chance, you seem very invested in this conversation, do you know by chance the top performing districts or schools within the state, what their proficiency rate is?
No, you tell me that, Tiffany.
Okay. So I don't know exact numbers, but it's actually you're ranked. But here's what I'm going to tell you. So you're actually ranked based on who scores the highest. So it doesn't mean that 80% of their kids were even proficient. It just means that they scored better than we did. So if we're looking at reading level, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of those kids are on reading level either. The state assessment does not tell you that. It just says they scored better on that test. So again, comparative in regards to that. I won't disagree with you, but also those that are high-performing schools do not have 80% of their population at grade level.
Okay, but we have 2 schools in the bottom 5%
That's us,
of
we're
schools in
aware.
the state. And in Nelson County, that's unacceptable. It is.
So-
It's
Yes,
unacceptable.
you're exactly right.
Ms. Deaton makes a good point.
We're
you
very
make a
clear
good
with
point. That
New Haven's also been lower than this in the past.
You make a good point that, one, everybody was compared in this same structure. But I think what's important is when we talk about high-performing schools, we have 2 schools here that just acknowledge they were not focused on the state testing process. And I hate to say this, I hate to get this simple with it, but if New Haven and Foster Heights would have taken probably 3 weeks, 2 weeks to do test prep, they wouldn't be CSI. That's just the way the system functions. At the same time, we shouldn't have to do 2 to 3 weeks, right?
Right.
And I think that we recognize it's an ecosystemic approach. It's a partnership with families, it's a partnership with teachers, it's a partnership with the board, it's a partnership with everyone. And that's really what this is all about, is uniting together to tell the truth about what it is and what it isn't. And I think that's where we are. And I think Mr. Hill and Ms. Clark are engaging and ready to do that. I think that over the coming years, we'll see if we say performance, a high-performing school means state tests, we're probably not going to move up to the top of that performance scale. What we are doing in our schools, that we could say, what are the Nelson County schools doing where they are number one in the state in? And I'd say many of the things we are doing in our schools with project-based learning, thinking about the future of houses and Caring Connects and connecting kids to community, those things are not on the school report card. The number of students that we have that are in student leadership positions and engaging and thinking about the work of challenge teams and all this other work, it's not on the school report card. The fastest path for us to look good in the newspapers when they write the scoreboard in October from the state is to simplify, align to the state standard, and ensure that we're preparing kids to pass these tests and meet proficiency. We're trying to find the balance, right? We're trying to find that balance of rigor and experience and authenticity, and it's something, unfortunately, that's uncommon in education. Mostly because the work's already so difficult, it's already difficult work, people just take the fastest path. But if you think about, right now in the state of Kentucky, 20% of people are graduating from a four-year university. Another 15 to 20% are graduating from a 2-year or other post-secondary program. 60% are not going to college. All of this, while it's important foundational pieces, much of the educational construct in Kentucky and in the United States public school is organized to send kids to college. What we're trying to do is to honor the humanity that really doesn't serve that construct while also providing that foundational academic rigor. And it's a balancing act, and it's something we're going to have to get really good at doing and talking about, and obviously we're not there yet with some of our conversations.
I think my frustration, and Mr. Norman and Ms. Berry, I think have said the same thing. My problem isn't that we were in the bottom 5%. I don't think that happened because of you guys. I don't think it happened overnight. I think it's been a problem that has been brought to light of recent. I'm happy that Katie is in the school. It's an opportunity to figure out maybe where there was some failings and to do better. And there's always an opportunity to do better. My problem is the lack of ownership, not by you. I mean, we're making, there's this KDE report. It had 32 stakeholders. I mean, professional educators prepared it, and we're dismissing it. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to crucify you guys for scores. I just think we need to own where we are and be willing to get better. And we don't have to pick, guys. We don't have to pick between killing it. We don't have to pick between reading and doing math at level and being good at community relationships and sending kids to work. We don't have to pick. We can do both. And we can do both well. And there's districts that are doing both well. So that's my problem with it.
And for me, that's something that, I invite you all to be part of the solution. If you care about that and you want to be part of the solution, come and work with our teachers. See the work that's going on.
I've tried.
But you came unannounced, David.
Half an hour.
Yes, because I was meeting with our teachers doing this work, and I'm not going to take my time away from our teachers. If you had the courtesy to let me know in advance and had that, I would have expected you. Yeah. But I wasn't leaving my teachers.
Every school with you all, because I want our kids reading and writing and preparing for life. And it is. I mean, you all can grumble whatever you want to do, but I'm passionate about it. I've seen what interventionist does. I know what it does for kids, because my kid was done that way. Somebody told me we couldn't read and write, and then all of a sudden they found resources to teach them read and write. It empowers kids. Kids that can't read and write is doomed for life. And that's what we're doomed for life right now. Those kids can never recover from that.
That's why I'm very proud of our team, because they are putting forth a lot of effort in that.
So I think we have to be very careful we have to be very careful as a board, we have to be very careful as schools to assume because a student isn't proficient that they can't read or write, that they can't do math. That's just simply not the case. And Mr. Norman, you told me last week we have the worst schools in the state, quote. That's what you told me. And that's simply, one, we're not trying to compare ourselves to every other school in the state. Every school has their unique gifts, their unique challenges. We are a part of that. There are thousands of schools in the state of Kentucky. There's 173 school districts. And our reality is, in Nelson County, we've taken some healthy, innovative steps to reimagine education. Mr. Hill and Ms. Clark have been a part of that conversation. Saying things like our schools are the worst schools in the state, not only is it not true, it's simply harmful. And we have to move beyond that narrative to support our schools. We have some of the most visionary educators in the state of Kentucky. And our reality is, right now we're at a crossroads. Everybody's aware of it. Are we going to support our schools as a board? Are we going to continue to embrace their humanity and imperfections? Or are we going to weaponize them? And the KD report, people were so hungry to see that report. And I can tell you that when we interacted with that report, we were sincere, but by no means did we put on a dog and pony show and tell them all the things that could have checked the boxes. In fact, we went above and beyond to really help think about the future. That's our story. And that's New Haven's story. That's Foster Heights' story. It is what it is. In fact, this is probably the best thing that can happen as we try to find the balance, is that it's a public scene and that we can talk about the disparities and the way we find these challenges. So there's a benefit to this, and I appreciate and value your pushback as board members. I appreciate your pushback as a community. But it's not so simple. We have 275 educators in our schools that are looking to do something that's not the same as what's going on next door. And we have 12 principals that are looking to build the future of education in a way that isn't the same as what's going on next door. And we have to honor and respect that. If at the end of the day, if our goal is to climb the state rankings and state test scores over the next 5 to 7 years, that ladder is going to be killed and nullified, because the truth of the future of education is it's going to be highly personalized, highly individualized. It's not going to be about how one school compares to another. And while that sells well, and then the Kentucky Standard has nothing else to write about generally because education is hard to write about. It's complex. That's the truth. And that's the story we're preparing for. That's why community-based accountability is the future of accountability. That local communities have to come together and say, we value this. We want this for our kids, and here's how we're going to measure it. And we're not going to measure it once a year and get the results 6 months later. We're going to do it every 3 to 4 months. And we're going to invest in that. And our board is behind that work and feels excited with us, and we celebrate the heck out of it when it comes into this room. That's where we're at. That's our crossroads. And unfortunately, we've lost sight of that crossroads. 2 months ago, we were at a crossroads around facilities. Somehow, that fast, it went from facilities to test scores. We can't tell which is which. Our truth is, we're at a crossroads. Tonight is an important part of that conversation. I would like for you guys for us to be able to transition on from this conversation. We've all said a lot. I've said too much, but it's important that it's said. So at this point, I think we need to move ahead and approve this process and allow Foster Heights and New Haven to really be celebrated.
With that, thank you. I need a motion to approve the Kentucky Department of Education as the approved vendor for the school turnaround team and Foster Heights and New Haven CSI revisions as presented. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Norman, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Bowling. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you. Our next item is the next strategic decision making. That's the facility plan stakeholder engagement timeline. That's Superintendent Bradley.
In brief, following discussion in March, there was asked for more facility planning options to be put on the table, considered. Tonight is another step in that conversation. As you know, I guess it was February, just about 50, 60 days ago, The previous facility plan was ended as we know it in terms of the one step, which was the community campus plan at Thomas Nelson High School, which is the middle school addition. The district facility plan still exists as we knew it then, and it really comes down to where the board wants to move in the facility planning process next. We know this facility planning process has created significant public conversation and dialogue over the past 2 years. And there are unique factions that formed as a byproduct of this facility planning process. And at the end of the day, it is the Nelson County School Board's responsibility, opportunity to choose to interact with the facility plan or not choose. So really tonight we're at step one before we move forward into larger community discussions that potentially could revisit and reconvene the LPC or start a new LPC or not, that would lead to further board discussions. Just as some context, this is a very laborious, time-intensive process. These are all the meetings that occurred from April 20th to December 3rd in 2021. It's a significant amount of conversation. I can assure you we probably won't do that again because that's a lot of conversations and meetings. And I'm just being frank, the number of interactions there were significant and unsustainable. So tonight, really, I'm providing options for the board to discuss if they so choose. These are not all the options at their disposal, but they are 9 options, including the current option that we live under and have lived under for some time. And we will provide these to the community. Know that they're just options for discussion. The board is not moving on any of these options at this time, but I think it allows you guys for dialogue about what matters. So this is what this looks very complex because it is. And this shows 9 different options around what could be in the Nelson County schools. And what I was asked to do was provide these options. I'm providing them tonight, allowing board members to choose to discuss these options. And I will tell you about any implicit bias in these options if you choose to hear about them. But any decision we make or any decision I'm involved in as a superintendent has to be based on 2 different things. Student equity, which is really every kid is set up for success. And student opportunity, which is expansion in the way we think about what we currently offer and what we can offer to our children across the district. So I share that saying that's what the facility planning process is intended to be organized around. And as a superintendent, I have to organize it around. It also is intended to be long-term solutions that provide long-term financial impact that benefit students and educators. So we do have copies of this, not enough for everyone in the room. The goal would be really, following tonight, to entertain more conversations with the community. Not everyone's here. At our 2 high schools over the coming weeks, really at the recommendation of the board as we think about that next step. So we will pass these out as the board discusses them. Know that there's no way for us to cover every detail of these options. So I can't explain these options. We'll just pass these out. Ms. Goody, would you like to support us here? So there's not copies for everybody. We'll just put them up. If you'd like to have a copy, it's also online. So I can explain the options. Yeah.
Because that's a lot of mess.
It's a lot of stuff. So the bottom left corner here, this is our current middle school option. It's our current layout. If you move up the left side here, it shows 2 high schools and 3 middle schools. Those 3 middle schools would be in New Haven, in Bloomfield, and at OKH on that option. That shows about 300 to 350 students at each middle school. That assumes that New Haven School would either be built or it would be combined with Boston and New Haven together. Top left side, this shows a new New Haven school or a new West Side school, whatever the board so chose. It can be located anywhere. And it would have approximately 500 students in that coming off the west side. This is a 2 high school model that divides schools east and west. We did talk about this in the last facility plan as well, east and west side middle schools. This to the right, it has an equal sign here. It means these 2 plans are equal to each other in what they provide in terms of equity and access. They're not the same in terms of transportation, but in terms of equity and access, they're the same. This has 2 high schools, Thomas Nelson High School and Nelson County High School. It has Mile Kentucky Home as the west side feeder, Bloomfield Middle School as the east side feeder, which would have students on the east side attending Bloomfield, again, that would then attend Nelson County High School, students on the west side attending Oak Kentucky Home that would then attend Thomas Nelson High School. The top right corner is community campus, which is also on this one called East and West 612. It's the same plan, just a different, just showing east and west side. In the middle here, we have 1 high school and 2 middle schools, and it shows you could do that in multiple different ways. Thomas Nelson High School could become the 1 high school. That would be also a part of a conversation where Bloomfield would have east side students, Nelson County or OKH would have west side students or some variation therein. Of course, that would be a lot of redistricting, but that's part of any plan that we have. The bottom plan, which is equal to the top plan, these 2 plans are equal to each other in terms of equity and access. The top plan is more cost effective in the same way this plan here with Bloomfield being a middle school is more cost effective. The plan here, Nelson County High School is 1 high school, Mile Kentucky Home as a middle school, and Thomas Nelson High School as a middle school. Has east and west middle schools, 1 high school. On the right side here are some variations that you could consider as a board, which has 8th graders attending the high schools, shows 8 through 12. With, as we know, we do have space in our high schools and we do want to continue to offer more to middle schoolers. This also combines middle schools to be a little smaller. You'd have east side students at Bloomfield and you'd have west side students at Mile Kentucky Home. Lastly, we talked about this as well in the facility plan, 1 middle school and 1 high school, which would have approximately 1,000 students. Thomas Nelson, 1,450 at Nelson County High School. Again, any of these plans has multiple steps in the process. It's really just a way to show possibilities. That's what the board has asked to consider.
So, just to be clear, redistricting would occur in almost all of the plans, including the 3 middle schools, the one that would be New Haven, OKH, and Bloomfield. Of course, it's not necessarily New Haven. I'm assuming that would include Boston middle school students.
You'd have to take Boston and New Haven to combine them.
And would you have to take more than that because there's only 240 kids in that direction. So who are you moving into that location would be the question. I know it's not a question.
Yeah, there's
for
lots
you,
of
it's a question
possibilities.
for the board.
I think we're just trying to get it to a place where they have a sustainable program. And 300 seems to be the minimum threshold.
To go along with what you're asking, Ms. Bowling, to make sure that so like in the upper left corner, that larger rectangular that is 2 equal scenarios. As I look at each half, so like in the upper left, so whatever the Boston, New Haven, plus some redistricting of other middle school, those would be feeder pattern to Thomas Nelson.
Right.
And the OKH 500, which somehow there's some redistricting as well there, they would be feeder pattern to Nelson County, which is something that's been a challenge for decades, is the feeder patterns.
Well, we've only had Thomas Nelson High School in existence for 10 years, so it's been a 10-year issue.
So a 10-year issue, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And prior to that, we had program issues, right? Bloomfield students and Oak Kentucky Home students had more programs, more access to athletic teams, more access to resources than Boston and New Haven.
Do you see that this, because I know a further item down on the agenda is having discussion about the local planning committee. Would you see this as something that's brought back to that local planning committee and say, here's another starting point for you, what questions do you have?
That's only for board consideration. I would say that, just as a reminder, if any of these plans were taken seriously, then it would be important for the board to consider, because we're going to have to spend money in most cases, right? There's a few solutions here that are much more cost effective. And I think that what's important really is that the board at this point in time allows us to do a bit of process of elimination in our conversation. And I feel like what to me that looks like is we started out 3 months ago talking about one high school versus 2 high schools. We haven't revisited that conversation, but I think board members have some assumptions about one high school versus 2 high school. I think my conversation all along for 2 years is it's about the middle schools. You know, it's the chicken or the egg. We believe it's the egg, and the egg feeds the high school. So that's been my bias and belief, right? That middle schools we have to organize those, unite those to provide more, and then our high schools can thrive. I would also say that if you look around this county and in this region, you're going to have a number of schools that have about 700 kids or less that also have a middle school in their parking lot that are also providing multiple opportunities. They don't have to have it in the parking lot, though. It can just be a feeder that provides access. Right here in our own community, we have those, and all the counties around us, we have those size schools as well. That's my bias. I've been clear on that bias. At the same time, the goal really is we can make anything work. We can make anything, well, let's just say, we can make any solution that unites students together for resources work. The current model, we can make it work, and we've been making it work for a long time, but it's not the most optimal model for kids, and it doesn't provide equity access that we know is needed. So for me, I think the most important piece of this is that we know where board members currently stand in their head around one high school versus 2 high schools. That's what's important to move this conversation forward.
Don't look at me. You all know where I stand. Like, I want middle schools to have more options, so I'm looking for the rest of the board to have
I think we could be successful in either 1 or 2. I mean, I do. Yeah. I think in some ways the one high school, I mean, I've said this, I think it would be more efficient in some ways with regard to staffing. But I'm not going to die on that hill. It's not the only way that we can be successful. I think people made a really good case for keeping Thomas Nelson open. I mean, certainly in a bigger high school, there's not as much opportunity for the connections. I can't argue that. So I think either is a possibility worth considering.
Either, I guess.
You're asking one high school, 2 high school, and I think either could work. I mean, there's 9 things on there.
I know, and that's what's difficult for me when I look at that, to think about bringing the community into a forum to start talking about all these options. I mean, while we can do that, I think we've had a lot of conversations around these, or at least I feel like I've had conversations around how all of these patterns could work or not, and where the weaknesses are or the challenges are and where the strengths are. I think the majority of the people in these rooms want to hear from the board members that they've not heard from. When you look at all of these options, what are you thinking for your community that your community could be supportive of? That's, I think, what we're looking at.
I'm not going to be able to look at this tonight and tell you which one. I mean, but I think it's certainly worthy of conversation. I mean, in time, this is literally pictures of schools with numbers. I mean, there's a lot of details that would need to be fleshed out. Transportation issues, and there's a lot. But I appreciate that you put this together, and it gives us a starting point. I think that's a good thing.
There was something you said just a moment ago, Ms. Bowling, and it made me think about it. I've used this analogy before. I don't think Mr. Marchese is here tonight. I know what a school bus looks like. I know they're yellow and I've ridden on them, but I don't know which is the right ones to buy, which is why I've always, and I think this board has always looked at Mr. Marchese and his staff, who have a breadth of experiences and knowledge. And I think it's to the point that I've just heard both Ms. Dean and you say that there's a lot here. There's a lot of variables. And I'll be quite honest, I'm not smart enough to pick from those variables, which is why I think the whole process within the Commonwealth of Kentucky for school districts has been local planning committees. That's why I think a little bit later on this agenda, we have an opportunity for it not to be the 5 people that sit here. And I'm trying to think, I mean, none of us really, I mean, Mr. Norman may have some facilities experiences in his career for the Nelson County Road Department. I know in the past, we always look at Mr. Pate quite a bit to get his insight on things. But I think that's why one of these is, I don't know that we can talk about these tonight. We need to have that breadth of experiences, the staff, the administrators, the certified staff, the parents, you know, the planning zoning person, because honestly, the planning zoning piece plays into this. I mean, where do you put these school buildings at if there is going to be anything done? I heard, I think it was Mr. Boblet say earlier that the student population numbers and where people are living.
Okay, let me say this. And I've said it before, the one high school, simply because we have classes or being taught at one high school that's not being taught at the other high school. And I don't think that's fair to the kids, for example, the chemistry, advanced math. I don't think it's fair for the kids that want to be college bound or even work ready. I don't think it's fair to them. That if our motto is college and career ready, we need to do as much as we're doing for the career as we would do for the college-bound student. That's just how I feel.
Ms. Norman, any thoughts?
I'll keep myself.
No comment?
I mean,
I'm just asking you if you want to comment.
there's a lot of stuff going on here. I mean, I've talked to a lot of different professionals. I've talked to a lot of different professionals, like a lot of different models. 1 high school, 2 high schools. Talked to Kentucky Department of Education. They liked 1 high school. I mean, so, you know, it's just because my answer is different than yours don't mean I'm wrong or you're wrong. So it's all, you know, it's all just, we got to find out what's best for the kids and what's best for our communities. So, you know, I'm not here to say my idea is right, but I'm here to listen. And go back and forth like that is not right to go and throw people under the buses. So I want that to stop.
I do think there would be a benefit in narrowing down some of these choices in terms of, or else the LVC will be meeting more than they met in the prior years. So
We started, just to be reminder, this is where we started in 2021. This was the same sheet. It was 4 options. So we're working towards this option. These are obviously more, I agree. I mean, there's a few of these that, you know, clearly are a little more complicated. At the same time, I think so we have to make some conversation or commitment to the schools right now to say, hey, we're not going to do anything with the facility plan. We're not going to touch it. We're just going to play out where we are for the next couple of years, or we're going to have to make a commitment that says, hey, we're serious and sincere about talking through these options. Otherwise, we're going to be in the same place a year from now, same place 2 years from now, and it sounds to me like Mr. Jackie is in a place where he's looking to get feedback from the local planning committee. Ms. Berry is sympathetic to 1 high school, understands the positives and negatives of both. Ms. Bowling, where would you say you are?
Well, I mean, I'm again, similar to what David's even saying, I want our students to have success in these buildings. And while it's not about the building, it is about how many students are in the building. And if you're looking at manageable classroom sizes, spaces where the teachers and the educators and the caregivers and everyone that's in the building knows the face of every student, 1,000 kids in a middle school, that's a lot of students. I mean, the one high school scares me in itself because that's 1,450 kids. We already know, educators know, top 10%, they're gonna flourish no matter where you put them. If there are 1 million kids in that building, those top 10% kids are gonna be there. They're gonna put in the effort. The bottom 10%, we're gonna know their names. We're gonna know those kids, but everybody in between are the ones that it's survival of the fittest. If you make it, you make it. If not, so what? You weren't bad enough that we knew your name. You weren't great enough that we knew your name. And somewhere you just fit through the tunnel. So when I look at that one, I don't believe that every student is going to find success in that. And to me, that's why I was never a big fan of that model. Now, we also have to be truth tellers when we're looking at this and we're saying our stories. If money is a big deal for this board has to come out and say, we are not spending this money, because that limits the options that we're also going to have. Like I said in March, if this board says we are not closing X school, that also limits these options. So while I appreciate, and I do think that the LPC would bring great amounts of knowledge and information around this, if they don't have that data from this board, it's useless. Because this board can turn around and say, yeah, but still not good enough. Well, we have to know what the parameters we have to stay in as an LPC.
I mean, that's a good point, Ms. Bowling. I mean, so some of what you were just saying got me to looking at a few of the different examples, maybe to go more than with just the answer of, oh, well, LPC, okay? So, top row center. So we've got 2 high schools, we've got 2 middle schools. So if I'm looking at symbols, I start thinking to myself, and which this gets us into some optimal numbers, right? 500 at the middle school. That allows those opportunities, staffing to be met. But then the next thing I think of is, okay, so OKH sits on the Nelson County High School campus, but all of those kids will go to Thomas Nelson High School.
No. Are you talking about the center one?
I'm talking top center.
Top center, okay. I was looking over.
And then every kid that would be going to Nelson County High School now goes out to Bloomfield Middle School, so that's going to mean all the Woodlawn families. And more, honestly, it'd probably mean every family east of the Louisville Road, New Haven Road, the current kind of districting area attendance boundary of the 2 high schools. So all of that, I mean, you talked earlier about redistricting. And then I look down into the center row, far right. No, I'm sorry, not center row, far right. Yeah, actually it is, center row, far right, which turns the 2 high schools into the 8-12s. But there's still going to be a challenge with redistricting there. I'm trying to think through some of the, okay, so what's going to be the pros and cons of each of these 9 scenarios. So we're going to be faced as a board then. We've got to make a decision that we're going to do a lot of redistricting, which we also know has been a challenge for quite some time. And maybe that's the way that we solve that challenge. We fix a mistake of how the districting happens, because it does align feeder patterns.
But it's common sense. There's common sense redistricting, and there's craziness redistricting.
Well, and then I look at center row, far left. Okay, 2 high schools, 3 middle schools. I would assume OKH kids, the 350 would go to Nelson County because it makes sense. It's on the same campus. Whatever this Rams Middle School, I'll just call it that. The 300 kids, they would go to Thomas Nelson. And then the Bloomfield Middle School's 325, where we've got kids there that are going to go to both high schools, so that destroys feeder patterns and also destroys the community building. I mean, so as you said that, I started looking at some of those alignments, and I think that's something, if we do want some community input, it would be how comfortable would Woodlawn be with being redistricted to Bloomfield than OKH? Because I mean, I can't speak, I'm not smart enough to know how comfortable they would be. So we have to find out what are going to be some of the things that people in this community are willing to give up. Because consensus isn't you get what you want. Consensus is everybody gets something, but nobody gets everything.
Well, it sounds like good conversation tonight. Little by little, we're having some conversation. And it sounds like it's probably healthy that we at least share this publicly with some people and begin to, and at the bottom of the message that we send out, I do think we want to talk about next steps for engaging and sharing this more broadly. And I feel like over the next few weeks, we want to host some forum at Nelson County High School and Thomas Nelson High School, as those are the primary centrally located places to have a conversation. We're going to have to simplify this further and just provide context to let people know there is no decisions being made. We're just allowing for community feedback. We're going to have to be thoughtful in how we get that feedback.
I do want to say one thing more that I didn't say about the one high school. When we get the Up Center up and going, a lot of those kids will be over at the Up Center. A lot of those kids will be at their jobs. A lot of those students will be doing their thing. We will not have all those students in the building at the same time. So I think that gives a falsity, that gives people the time to think about that. I know it seems 1450, but I was out there when we had 16 something in there one year. And it is crowded. But I'm saying, if we get that Up Center going and it's productive, and I have no doubt that it won't be. Yeah, I know it will be. It'll be the top in the whole region. But those kids we will not have all those kids in that school at one time.
But that depends on if you're building it at Nelson County or Thomas Nelson. Again, if it's about money, it's more cost effective. And again, these are the kind of conversations the LPC can have. It's more cost effective for it to be where we only have to build a wing instead of 85 million. I wish it was 85,000. 85 million or whatever it was going to be at the high school.
50 million.
50. So you go from 27 million to 50 million.
Well, nobody's talking about putting 50 million into it either.
It was just the original
part
number.
Of the DFP, it is.
Well, that's not necessarily, may not happen though.
I think these are things that are probably premature without the information we need, really.
So next step is community discussion that will be very entry level. It'll be very entry level conversations, nothing more. All right.
Okay. Okay, can we move on? Are we ready to move on?
The next item was just an item added by Mr. Jackie.
And actually, I mean, I would make a motion that we table this one based on some of the information we get out of those community meetings at the two high schools. So I make a motion to table this item until we've got a little bit more info out of those two community meetings, and then we'll come back and revisit it at a board meeting post those.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Ms. Bowling. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now we're moving on to the Nelson County Campus Master Plan.
So welcome to Paul Tenyes. If those of you that are looking at the slide, it's 10 yes, just like that, like yes we can. And Paul is the leader of SWT Design here locally and is beginning the process over the coming weeks with the Nelson County campus, Okeechobee Home Campus, Area Technology Center Campus Master Plan. And he's just going to share with the board briefly an update on that process, knowing that he's just introducing tonight.
Thank you. And thank you for having me tonight. While it's loading, really the purpose of the master plan is to start thinking about the spaces around the high school campus, Area Technologies, Old Kentucky Home, and how we could make them better, how we could make them function better, how we could think about what they're going to be like in 30 years. You know, they've been there, they've sort of evolved over time. Things have been added, things have been removed. Buses are here, buses are there, all the different layers to it. So it's how do we make it function better? How do we keep cars from stacking out onto the highway? How do we drop off kids in a more safe manner? It's all of these sorts of things. So it's about creating a campus-wide experience. Kids are going to be going around. There's a lot of different layers to it, and we want to make it function like a cohesive campus as much as we can. Something that's safe, something that's a great place to be. And then smart investments. We want to make sure moves that we're making are not going to cause problems down the road. So we've got a 30-year time frame so that we can make sure we're investing in the right places. Like, for example, if a ball field's not functioning, if it's flooding or there's some issue with the ball field, maybe it's not the drainage issue we should fix, maybe the ball field's not in the right place. Or if there's something like, buses are getting in the way of car drop-off, well, how can we solve those problems? That's really the types of things we're going to be looking at with this effort. So just real briefly, the planning process. We're at kind of kickoff now. We're going to be getting together and kind of thinking about our vision and goals for these spaces, and then really doing a lot of listening. We come at this with a lot of humility. We really don't want to bring in preconceived notions. I've learned a lot tonight, which I really appreciate. But we're really not going to come at it that way. We really want to listen. And one of the first efforts in that is focus groups, bringing together the athletics folks and getting their thoughts on things, the facilities folks and how they deal with their set of issues, the teachers, the administrators, and so on and so forth. Even potentially bringing in some of the student groups, like the, I forget what they're called now.
The challenge team.
The challenge group, exactly. And so how we bring those things together and just listen and start to then synthesize the information, where we're going to go with that, what is that going to lead us to. And then we'll generate some master planning ideas. These are going to be the main participants in the planning process. So the steering committee, it'll be the principals, the leaders of the schools. It'll be faculty, it'll be students, as I mentioned. Those focus groups, specific area focuses, and then the board. We're going to use you as a sounding board, the group that can kind of say yay or nay, approve the plans, give us some feedback in the process as well. But that's the general idea, and then that's kind of the space we're looking at. So.
And I think the primary shift, as a reminder, this is not about the building, it's about the entire campus. So.
Any questions?
Thank you, Paul.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is the Up Center Design and Development. And that would be, well, Studio Kramer, but it's not.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I good? All right. Good evening. Miss Berryman and I are excited to be able to spend a few minutes with you all tonight. And really, the conversation is bigger than the Up Center. Really, we want to take time to explore tonight what will the future demand for student success and also workforce success. And I have to say, I was getting a little fidgety sitting in my seat when we started talking about accountability because, as you all know, I'm old and I've been in education a long time. And much of my time has been around career and technical education. And because of that, I've had the opportunity to sit with employers in rural Kentucky communities, to being able to go to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington and hear employers talk about how secondary schools and our school districts across the nation need to change because we are not meeting the skills demands for the future as we think about what our students need to be successful. And this is all conversation when we've been looking at federal and state assessments. So it's an honor to be able to work alongside with employers in this community, and it's more than just sending our kids to work. It's being able to work alongside with employers to talk about what will the future demand? And a few weeks ago, we introduced our Next Gen communities, and we talked about the importance of collective investment. How does Nelson County Schools unite with business and community partners to talk about how we can create shared experiences? So I believe it was this Monday or last Monday, I've lost track of my weeks, we had students begin classes at our airport. So that's an example of those partnerships. The Samuelsfield Airport came together with Nelson County schools and multiple districts to create an opportunity where our kids are flying planes, building planes, learning about physics, and really applying real-world stuff. So Next Gen Communities, how do we collectively invest? How do we make a collective impact? So how do we come together with our employers to really talk about what is important? So community-based accountability is an example of that. What do our students need to be able to do? What do they need to be able to demonstrate to be successful once they leave our schools? So then we have successful communities. And lastly, collective success. What skills are required and how do we create a pipeline for all employers? And one thing I cannot go without mentioning tonight is that Nelson County Schools is the first district in the state of Kentucky to have a teacher apprenticeship program. So I do believe that'll help address some of our retention and training issues that I've heard some of our people speak of, because we're going to be creating our own pipeline right here alongside Western Kentucky University. And I have to note, the University of Louisville's already reached out saying, how did you do that? And that's thanks to Karen Lee, Teresa Henderson, and Courtney Newton, who has helped create that. So I had to say that because we hadn't celebrated that yet. So when we think about Next Gen Communities, we know the UP Center and career and technical education is the foundation to that conversation. So what we want to spend some time tonight is talking about is we think about the future of career pathways in career and technical education. What does that require of facilities that provide flexibility to allow us to adapt as the world of work changes? So we've visited with you numerous times where we have talked about the current ATC facility. So I'm going to let Ms. Berryman take over for a few minutes to really talk about what does the future of that center look like, and where do we want to go from there with that center? Thanks, Laura. So starting at the beginning of the school year, we took a deep dive into this facility conversation led by Stephen's amazing team with our teachers, with community partners to say, what does industry demand? How do we support them? And how do we build a facility that's going to do that? So up here you see the design development piece where you want to talk through some of the highlights. And there's a lot to celebrate in this, and I'm a little too excited to celebrate it, to be honest. So first big celebration is with this new facility plan for the ATC, the UP Center, we're going to have expanded lab spaces. So right now, the ATC has a single hallway that runs as the vein in the middle of the building. Our classrooms are attached to our lab spaces. Our goal is to relocate those classrooms to the other side of that hallway and extend our lab spaces all the way to that hallway, giving more room for updated equipment, more room for more students, more room for authentic projects that are going to benefit everyone in this room, everyone in our community. Second piece, because of the partnerships we've had in this community, we know that heavy equipment and diesel mechanics are two highly needed industries in our area. And so we're excited to begin those programs and start building space for them. So you'll see over here, we have the addition of our heavy, I know you can't read that, it's tiny, but the heavy equipment, diesel mechanics classrooms, diesel mechanics garage, and where the current bus garage is, will become our diesel mechanics yard. And we'll be able to use some pieces from the bus garage to make that work. We're also very excited because I know you've seen the facade of the front of the UP Center. It's a big pointy piece of glass, but that piece of glass creates transparency between our school and the community. Traditionally, schools have been four walls, and people can't see in them. That's not the point of the UP Center. We want to open our doors, invite community in. So on top of having that beautiful facade, when you come in, there will be a community space that will be flexible for businesses, organizations to have meetings, other collectives, as well as 2 additional adult education classrooms. So there's a lot to celebrate there, and I'm so excited to get to talk about it finally. So thank you. In addition to, but with anything good, you find limitations. So I had the privilege to work in the ATC this year, And although those pieces are wonderful, we know that our community and our students deserve even more. We can do so much more with the Up Center beyond those 5 programs. So with that current design, because the ATC, the Up Center, was designed to be a part of community campus, we have to relocate one of our programs. 4 teachers, 120 students. Our health science program, we need to find a new home. In addition to that, when we look at the limitations of that space, we don't have a really big space for people to come in. Other schools have beautiful gyms. Miss Victory, love this gym. But we have an event coming up in May where we're inviting families, we're inviting employers, and we're having to do it all week long because we can't get them in the building. We know that community partners need larger event spaces. We're also thinking critically about how do we get elementary and middle school into our building, because that's how you build programs. It doesn't start as a 9th grader. It starts as a 5th grader. If they're not in our building, seeing what it looks like when they're 10, man, my son is 2 and he lives in that automotive lab. It's going to make powerful, powerful change. So although we have a lot to celebrate at that facility, we have a lot of things that we can work toward that's going to make this place be powerful for the next 30 years and not just the next 5. So this is where Ms. Arnold's going to jump in.
So as we think about the future of work and we think about career and technical education, again, it's about how do we continue to expand opportunities and experiences? How do we break down the silos that have traditionally been in career and technical education, where academic courses are separate from the CTE world? How do we start uniting that through more models like our collab models throughout the district? And we know to do that, we have to expand our space. So that leads us to the Community Workforce Center, which is an expansion of the Up Center at the old Kentucky Home Middle School. So if we were able to expand into this area, we could explore a hospitality and tourism collab utilizing the existing cafeteria structures and items that we have in that school that would require little, if any, renovation to begin that type of program. And when you talk to our local employers, that is a big need in this area. We could also create opportunities for more future programs in flexible space, add general education courses and core content courses. Also thinking about how do we have a space for our health science program and then connect that to our care clinics across the district where we already have students working in those care clinics as their capstone year as a senior. So this is providing you an idea of how if we could get access to Old Kentucky Home, it could just be another game changer as we think about the future of workforce success, not just in Nelson County, but across our region. Because remember, the ATC services LaRue, Bardstown, Nelson, and Bethlehem students. So it's expanding it opportunities across our region. We do have a handout for you. We wanted to go through this before we gave you the handout so we could make sure we had your attention. But do you all have any questions for us?
I've got one. You know, Bardstown got that grant to build their supposedly ATC. Can you give me something to go on that when you said Bardstown?
Mm-hmm. So Ms. Berryman could probably answer that better than me. I do know we're trying not to duplicate programs, yes, but Ms. Berryman may be able to talk a little bit more about what you know Bardstown's going to be offering.
So I'm not going to get into the details what programs they're going to be offering, but Ms. Roller has been in talks with Bardstown about what they're building, what their pathways look like, to make sure that we have equal access and more access for our students to different opportunities. So their programs may run parallel to ours, not the same, but in the same category. For example, right now we have a carpentry program that's very specific, very skilled, very narrow, whereas Bardstown's looking at a more general contractor version of a construction program that gives a different pathway for students. So their programs will not be the same as ours. Instead, it's going to be looking at those programs through a different lens, providing more opportunities for our region.
Are we allowed to use theirs?
We haven't had those conversations yet.
Excuse me?
We haven't had those conversations yet. They're still very much in
Okay.
their infancy and
But
their
there
planning.
will be a conversation?
We would love to.
Okay. Because if they're different, I want our kids to have every advantage in the world. I
Yes,
mean,
so remember, we do a memorandum of understanding every year with our partnering districts. We'll probably be bringing that to you in May. And I think as programs expands and opportunities, we could possibly integrate those into future memorandums of understanding.
yes, thank you.
This item is on the agenda originally for the Up Center ATC Design and Development. We weren't able to move forward with that really until we have more clarity around what the board is thinking with a larger facility plan, in part because of health science programming in particular and the size it demands. Originally on the facility plan, Okotoki Home was going to become an expanded Up Center. I know that, and I know there's some people online that talk about capacity, and they want to make sure every single seat in our schools are filled up. This is a great example of utilizing a space to think about the future and how we can partner with our community. This, in theory, doesn't support the capacity conversation. What it supports is real utility for expanding CTE programming, expanding funding patterns. As this expands, we generate more revenue for students and teachers. And I think it's important that we understand that. The more we create opportunities, the more revenue we have. And this is one more example of that. This year alone, we received about $500,000 this year than we received in 2021-22 because of the work of Miss Arnold taking the Up Center local and expanding programming across the district. We received $500,000 more because of those two pieces there. And now we're able to provide more and sustain that for kids.
Which I think goes back to where we were talking about facilities. When we're talking about eliminating some of those options, again, we limit what we can do at the Up Center if we keep OKH middle school a middle school.
Yeah, because our reality is, and Stephen's here, but we're currently landlocked with the Up Center, so we would be moving toward the bus garage with the diesel mechanics program. But your reality is you do have limited space to expand that current structure. And also the idea that we could leverage some of the current OKH with little renovation and be able to do some of those program offerings that we've discussed and gotten feedback from local employers about for the future.
But it can be worked out.
It can be worked out.
It can be worked out. That's what I'm saying. We can make anything work that we need to make work.
We can. We're also just, part of what we want to do is make the board aware of opportunities as we want to expand future workforce development, community partnerships, and that's really what this conversation is about before we take action and spend significant money on the Area Technology Center.
Yes.
And be limited.
And I think that's the thing we talk about opportunities. We want to make sure that we are creating the most opportunities for students we can. I know that's your goal. That's our goal. And so when we think about the ATC, soon to become the Up Center, hosting those 5 programs is not using the Up Center to its full potential to what this community deserves. So thinking, how do we make it bigger? How do we make it better for Nelson County?
Thank you, guys.
Also, board members, the Up Center will be hosting the Chamber Connect tomorrow morning at 8:30 if you're up. I know this has been a long meeting, but you all are invited, 8:30, Up Center, Chamber Community Connect. We'll have about 40 or 50 employers in the building tomorrow morning.
Breakfast at 7?
8:30.
Breakfast is served.
Not at 7. No. Okay, thank you, ladies. Next up, middle school athletic reorganization.
So representatives from our local middle school football programs have asked the board to consider funding related to equipment for potential middle school football program reorganization. This is a part of a larger conversation. In fact, it's a conversation that's been going on for some time. And as you think about the facility plan, they'll have access to this as well on parts of this. as you think about the facility planning process,
Thank you, sir.
this conversation goes hand in hand. In fact, I appreciate Mr. Osborne talking about all the work that's gone into football programs over the years. People like Mr. Osborne and others contributed a great deal of time, energy, and money to make those things come to life throughout the 1990s. And those things are important to our community, they're important to our kids. But I think it's also important that we recognize that our facility planning process, the equity and opportunity matrix that we provided, is not based currently on what creates the best football team. And it's important, as we talk about this conversation tonight around student leadership, that it's really not about tribal factions and who wins the most games in a year or two. It's about 10 to 20-year commitments that we're making. So we started this conversation 5 years ago. This is page 69 of the original Community-Centered Schools vision. You'll see Bill brought us there on the left side. We had 4 priorities: invest in people, and we've committed to building programs by investing in people like those you see up there. The positions for Mr. Peak and Mr. Reynolds didn't exist 5 years ago. For student leadership directors, those positions did not exist. We also continue to invest in compensating coaches and expanding access for coaches on teams because we felt like it was unsustainable in the current place. Priority number 2 says invest in and unite feeder programs. This has been a 5-year priority. Investing in and uniting feeder programs that allow middle schools to take on a cohesive vision with those high schools. Again, this is a 5-year conversation. The last 2 I won't cover, but essentially it's partnering with community and celebrating students more broadly in their engagement with student leadership. So as we think about tonight's conversation, really what we have in front of us are currently 5 people who have given significant time, energy, and heart to a process that is important to our kids. We have coaches who have been a part of building from scratch, and coaches who have been part of a renaissance in rebuilding a program. So I think, firstly, guys, Mr. Moore, Mr. Hurst, just know that we honor that reality that you have put a lot of thought and time and energy into this work, and any conversations that we have should in no way diminish that, because we're uniquely organized as a district to not have strong middle school football programs. So your conversation tonight is timely, and it's a symptom of all the other things that we've been talking about. So this conversation started at Thomas Nelson, and then it entered into the conversation at Malkatika Home in Bloomfield. We'll have representatives from each side be able to talk briefly about what their ask is, and then it allows the board to have a conversation to recognize that. I will say that my recommendation on this before we get started originally was that there needed to be a conversation at Thomas Nelson about the future of middle school, because Southwest Nelson was not sustainable based on the conversations Mr. Hurst was having. I recommended to Mr. Moore and Mr. Reynolds that they not entertain this conversation at this time, partly because of the facility plan. At the same time, I think it's important that you guys are here and that you're a part of this conversation tonight, because actually it's going to be a much better conversation with you guys at the table. So, Mr. Hurst.
So I guess I've reached out, or board members, I appreciate those who've reached out and talked after hearing me speak at the last board meeting in regards to where we stand with middle school football. Currently, we haven't rebranded Southwest Nelson football. The potential for that to go to Thomas Nelson Middle School football is what we're looking at. We've asked for some funding, and some of you have received email copies of it, and a hard copy tonight for everybody. Mr. Norman, you did ask about those fancy helmets with the sensors in it. We did not include those on there because of the cost right now.
Thank you.
But if you find that money, we'll take them.
All right, I will. I'll find out.
The current reality as it sits right now is that Southwest Nelson is, last year was unable to field a 3rd and 4th grade rec league team, which means that it's unlikely to have a 5th and 6th grade rec league team this year, which means that 2 years from now we probably won't have a middle school team. It's not been, the numbers just haven't been there. I would love to be able to provide you with the reason why. Unfortunately, I cannot. It is not because of a lack of effort or the lack of care or the lack of support in the community. It's not for lack of proper facilities, because in my heart of hearts, no offense to anyone, I feel like we have the best middle school facility in the region. Built by some great folks. Currently, Southwest Nelson Middle School football is made up of 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, which is not like everyone else. Most middle school football teams are 7th and 8th grade because technically what we play in is an 8th grade league. We are trying to move forward so that we do not have to constantly have younger kids, especially 5th graders, having to dress up, not even 6th graders. So the look is to expand, make it more grade level, make it more of the system where kids get to play where they want to play, where they're going to go to high school and make those make these more into a feeder system type program. With opening that up, it allows access to, you can see, almost 400 male students, where currently we have access to a little less than 200 male students. Each year, I feel like we're losing students because we just don't have that exposure there. We're not able to reach out and have them be a part of the program early on. We've seen some success with this with other sports, and we just want to continue to offer more opportunities for our kids and get more kids on a playing field. I say this all the time. Some of you sitting in this room can understand this. Football has become the F word you're allowed to say in schools, but it has a connotation. Football is the greatest team sport there ever was. I see men grow up, and we need to continue that. We need to continue those opportunities. By the way, I got 3 of them that live in my house at least part of the time. 2 of those kids are going to be doctors, and one of them is running his own shop, so I feel like we're doing a pretty good job of what we've had in the past. But it's time to move on. The way we move on is the formation of some feeder-style systems that benefit both high schools, allow the culture of both high schools to get into the middle schools, and build early on. So the numbers in front of you for the equipment, what we put together, our best estimate through the contract we have with H&W and Dukes, and so that's where we sit financially in regards to that.
Quick question on that, because I've heard you talk about the feeder system piece. I'm curious, in that lower half, the second bullet, what comprises those 380-ish male students?
So I did that data on that number so I can provide some clarity to that. So that is every middle school student, to the best of my ability, that is districted to Thomas Nelson High School. That's where that 383 male students come from. So that includes the ones that are at OKH and at Bloomfield that are distributed to Thomas Nelson.
Okay.
I just looked them up address by address to get that data.
Yeah, and I assume that the 160-ish number is simply based upon New Haven, Boston, and maybe it might be a few others, but not many.
At this point, Mr. Hurst might be able to express this better, but it pretty much is just New Haven and Boston. Okay. Very rarely at this point we have some kids from St. Catherine's. I think if we did this model, this would move more into purely a feeder system of just Nelson County school kids.
Yeah, I remember the St. Catherine piece back in about 2010-ish, whenever we had to create a board policy to address, I'll call Band-Aid, an underlying challenge we were having.
Right. I think, again, Mr. Hurst could probably express better than this than I can, but part of that decision was to, one, give those kids access. Part of that decision, too, was help us, again, get enough numbers to be able to have the team in the first place. So obviously, this huge increase in male students would allow us, we believe, looking at the numbers and the participation they've had through the Spartans,
Okay.
we feel like we can create sustainable teams for 7th and 8th grade, 5th and 6th.
Okay.
Because right now, Thomas Nelson has students from OKH, Bloomfield Middle, Boston, and New Haven. So we have 4 middle schools that are feeding Thomas Nelson, and we have 2 that feed Nelson County, correct? But the
Correct.
majority of the kids are coming from the 2 that feed Nelson County. Right? Okay.
So that would have been 5 football players that could go to play with Thomas Nelson, go to high school there, and go play with Thomas Nelson, and they're looking at 17, which would make, a pretty big difference in their program. And the conversations we've had as coaches, we want the kids to go play middle school where they're going to go to high school. So if somebody, regardless of where their zones were, if they are playing, if their zone for Nelson County, they want to go to Thomas Nelson, they need to go play with their future teammates and their future coaches in that system, those type of things, and vice versa. So what we want to do is be able for them to be able to practice at Thomas Nelson and do the things that they need to do, and then we can do the things we can do to build our future program. And wherever the kid ends up going to high school, that's who they play with, their future teammates, future coaches, and hopefully we build 2 good competitive football programs.
Well, I mean, and what I'm hearing you also say there, I mean, I think, elephant in the room, here in our community, Bardstown has always been a powerhouse, right? And their class, or seems to have been, and it's because those middle school students, they're playing those same systems, running the same plays, so by the time they get to the high school, they don't need the playbook. They got the plays. They got the team, the cohesiveness. And that's what I hear a little bit of what you're talking about there is trying to build that feeder system, that cohesiveness, that understanding the system and the expectation. Yeah.
So, Thomas Nelson, your ask is to support the startup of a program at the potential roundabout cost of $24,000. Additionally, any other ask in there that it's important as part of that conversation?
Really, currently, this is the biggest ask. I think the continuous hurdle that Matt and I are struggling through constantly is trying to figure out how to give access and opportunity through activity buses. And to be frank, this won't work until we can figure that out. And he and I are, in fact, are going to learn to drive a bus this summer to try to help fix that problem. But it's just not, I say that to say that limited proximity that we have really creates another huge struggle for both of us, not just myself, but for both of us. I mean, Matt needs an activity bus, and realistically, to do it right, we need 4 at Thomas Nelson, 1 from each school. Right. So I think those are other hurdles we got to overcome in the future. But in the short term, we need to commit to this first, and to be frank, that we can get our license and then find others who want to drive. So if you want to drive an activity bus, let me know.
Just real quick, that was the startup, Mr. Jackie, for Southwest Nelson in 2008 was because a guy that we know that coached here for a while, Mr. Bart Bruner, asked me one time, where are all my New Haven kids at Nelson County? Where's my New Haven athletes? And I pointed to the soccer field because at that time, that's where they were all going. Yep. He was instrumental in helping us start the program up and get it going so that the kids, instead of having to drive and travel to Bardstown, to Nelson County High School to play, now they had an opportunity to play in their community and cut the travel down. The reality is we're just not seeing the numbers. Now, we do have numbers, and Activity Bus would help numbers push up and create this system that, provide more opportunity for the kids.
This goes back 10 years, really, where we said middle schools needed to be aligned in many ways before the high schools. Now we're going backwards in thinking about middle schools. So we really put both school programs in a bind. And you guys have had to, I would say, scavenge to make it work within a system that is diluted from a geographic standpoint, from a busing standpoint. There is no West Side school, plain and simple. There is not a West Side middle school that exists to support this from occurring. There are multiple East Side schools, but they don't necessarily align perfectly either. And that's really why you guys are in this situation, trying to sort through it. Again, anything that we say, don't let it diminish the work. You guys are in a uniquely complex situation, right? So that's part of why you're here. So Nelson County Middle School, you guys also have an ask as a part of a conversation that relates to this.
Yes, sir. So I want to take 10 seconds real quick. I know we're here for football, but I think life's way too short not to do gratitude. Okay, so I want to start with Miss Preer, who is our principal at Old Kentucky Home Middle School. And I can tell you what, I don't know about the rest of the schools. I'm not in that building, but I do know at OKH, we put kids first. We help them build self-confidence. We have a very, very strong culture. Secondly, which is most importantly, I want to thank you students and any kids that are here. And then parents, I want to thank the entire community. Next, I want to thank Coach Stockdale and then Matt Reynolds for helping establish full Nelson culture throughout Nelson County. And I also want to thank Coach Peak and then Coach Hurst, because it's been a collaborative effort within these discussions for everybody to have equal opportunity and equitable resources. So I want to start by saying thank you to the board for allowing me the opportunity to come here and speak. I'm here today to ask for money for our football team to provide the necessary equipment and uniforms. We were in dire need of new uniforms and ordered them with our school account this past year. Currently, that's being processed. They'll be delivered in July. We haven't had new uniforms at North Nelson in 5 or 6 years. And good football uniforms last about 4 years. I'm asking for a total of $20,900, $6,300 for new uniforms. This will provide 45 new jerseys and 45 new game pants. $3,200 for getting helmets reconditioned. This covers the helmets that we had sent off to get reconditioned through H&W. This is mandatory every 2 years. $7,020 for 12 new Rydell SpeedFlex helmets. Helmets lifespan lasts 10 years. $2,700 for 45 padded girdles. This is mandatory. Again, this is proper equipment that players have to wear. $650 for 8 new footballs. $600 for 100 knee pads. And lastly, $400 for 200 mouthpieces. This equipment is necessary for the players to play and provides equitable resources, just as Southwest is getting in like, I 1,000% applaud them for doing this, and we support you all. This provides equitable resources and continues getting our student athletes the best opportunities. I say all of this to ask for equity in our district and provide equitable opportunities and resources to our students and athletes. And I believe the most equitable thing we can give kids is choice. Thank you all so much for your time. God bless. Thank you.
So the ask is, just to be clear with the board, the ask is for additional materials, resources.
And that would be based on, because are we basing those on current numbers? Are we basing those on numbers that Nelson County middle school students that are going to middle school or high school at Nelson County and Thomas Nelson middle school students? Okay. So is that are you guys averaging yours off your 166 players, or are you averaging it off? Like, I'm just trying to get an understanding.
They said it was 166 males.
Well, whatever. Doesn't have to be, right?
No, you can play a girl.
So I guess I want to be clear when we're having this conversation, because I don't want to create the division that we already have. Is that what we're doing?
I don't know.
Like,
originally, the ask was that
is it just money we need?
that the Nelson County became the Cardinals, the middle school. The Spartans became the Cardinals. Is that part of this conversation?
You're not talking about the rebranding part.
No, I appreciate that. I think you guys are in a unique situation. We talked about this. The politics of the facility plan and middle school football just all merged together, and we really don't want to put you guys in a spot where you have to navigate this. So you're asking for resources to further the program. I would say, just to be clear, equity means that both programs are set up for success. It's the same as New Haven and Boston. And that's really why our equity conversation exists. So equity assumes that Boston and New Haven kids have the same opportunity to be successful as students at other schools. Money and equity are not the same thing. So equity is about ensuring that there's a opportunity in this case that provides the right resources that allow them to be successful. Equality in this case would be that the money is the same. Unfortunately, there's no equity or equality in our current facility plan. That's not your fault. I say that because there's no school on the west side, right? That alone means there's no equity. There's 750 kids in Bloomfield and Oak Age. There's no equality, right? So there is no equity or equality in the conversation. The West Side Middle School team is not set up for success in the same way that a Spartan team currently would be, no matter what we do. I just want to be clear with everybody in the room so that we're not confusing the issue.
And I think that's where I'm at. I'm a little confused, well, more than a little. This is not us dividing the students that are going to Nelson County and Thomas Nelson. That is not what we're doing here. We're just still going the way we were going. We're just giving money for uniforms. So it's not really beneficial for you guys other than uniforms. You're not really getting any more students, right? Or as players.
Yes, it's a step forward.
Okay. Okay. So
they're going to probably average 25 to 30 players per year. We're going to average between 35 and 45 players a year. And that's just based on the numbers of the last 4 years. They usually said it's about 4 or 5 on our team last year that didn't play. They get 4 or 5, we're going to have about 23, 27. We're going to average about 35 to 40.
Okay. Coach Stockdale, what you just said, Coach Stockdale, I don't know about you, Ms. Bowling, but that starts helping to clarify it in my head. And really what I think what it boils down to then is, I mean, between Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Peak, it's going to be up to you all as those student opportunity leaders at the two schools to be able to figure out, okay, where are these kids going? Yeah.
well, I want to make that clear. If our board is making this decision that we're going to create some equity in this situation, and I'm not going to deny that this is not 100% equitable, I want to know that this board is ready to pay for the activity buses that are taking these kids to and from all their locations. That it's not left up to which I believe right now you guys are paying that out of your activity funds?
Drivers.
All right, who's up for driving the bus?
So, Mr. Reynolds, do you have your CDL? Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, because I believe even. Right, no, I 100% agree. I mean, I think Mr. Moore even wrote in his email that it's about building that relationship.
I think this is a great opportunity for both schools, and I appreciate the work you all have put into these programs. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I appreciate you presenting.
I just think I think you all are adult enough to figure this out. That's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with it. You have to start somewhere, and this is a good start. This is a better than good start.
I make a motion to approve these two requests for funds for Thomas Nelson and Nelson.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor by Ms. Deaton to fund the operation for both. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Norman. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, next item is student and shareholder engagement.
Next board meeting will take place on Election Day, May 16th, 2023 at Bloomfield Middle School. We did the same thing last year, so just some context. Beyond that, we'll be at the Up Center and potentially Malkanicki Home talking about the future Up Center on June 6th and the 13th, and at the Early Learning Center on July 18th. Of course, the board could call a special called meeting between now and then. This is our current schedule.
Okay. I need a motion to convene executive session.
So let me pose a question here on that because of a couple factors. One, the factor it's 9:15. And while this was originally going to be at the beginning to allow Mr. Ferris, the board attorney, to be here, I don't think Mr. Ferris is here. He was told at the last minute not to be here. So, I mean, I would entertain a motion just to table that conversation if need be for a future time, but I would do it with the challenge to board chair to start building that consensus among the board, the trust among the board to be able to make sure that we go forward as a community and as a school district.
Okay, I accept that challenge.
I don't want to be here till 10 o'clock at night either, but we are here. We don't have to make any decision in an executive session, but I think we would benefit from being able to talk behind closed doors, out of the eye of the public. I think it would be a benefit. So I would move that we go forward with
The motion, though, was to table it.
Do I hear a second to table?
I sort of agree with Damon, unfortunately. Not unfortunately. Eric is our attorney for the board, and I think he needs to be present in that conversation.
Yeah.
Well, I 100% agree. I'm ready to have conversation where we can talk about some things. And I think it's just important that he's here to kind of rally some of that.
With Mr. Ferris having some key information, with him not being here, it's not conducive to have the executive session, so.
I second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do I have all in favor of tabling? Tabling this issue?
Be tabling it, yeah. And so to do a quick voice vote, aye to table it.
Okay. Mr. Jackie is in favor of tabling it?
On table, yeah.
Oh, nay, I would move to go forward, yeah.
Nay, I move forward.
I want to table it, put it that way. Okay, so the nays have.
So it passed 3-2 to
yes,
table?
Yes. Okay, with that being said, I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion.